All right, sorry, let me start again. We will begin the lecture with the presentations from our four speakers today, and the question and answer session will be placed at the end of the presentation. So for those of you who wish to ask a question to the speakers, you may type your questions in the chat room by first stating your name and your university, and then when we go to the question and answer session, we will address your question. And the topic for today's lecture is Chronogram, Spatial Design and Decorative Visuals of a Cultural Space. And it will be divided into two sessions. The first session is brought to you by the first two speakers on the subtopic Spatial Design of a Cultural Space, Principles and Case Studies. So please allow me to introduce you to the first speaker, Mr. Amirul Idlan Mukhtar, BTech HND Bachelor of Science, Master of Architecture. And he is the founder of ASK Drafters, a platform for information sharing among architect students. And he also co-founded Doodle Malaysia, an artist movement that shares and showcases artworks. And as part of this movement, he has also co-organized art events such as Choteng La, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, and Choteng Ba. He was also creative advisor for Collab UMNO Luar Negara Melbourne in 2012, designer advisor for Musica Melbourne in 2012, and also illustrator and designer for Yara City Council Melbourne in 2013. And then from 2014 to 2016, he was a guest judge for the Malaysia VEX Robotics Competition. He's a member of the Malaysia Institute of Interior Designers, and he has worked in the architecture industry prior to joining academia. So it brings him joy and satisfaction to share his passion in art and architecture with his students. So Mr. Idlan, it is my pleasure to hand over the spotlight to you. The time is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Diana. Well, how many minutes do we have?
Around 25.
25. Okay, so I'm just going to make it very quick then. Okay, so I believe Diana already explained and introduced me to all of you. So good morning to all. All right, good morning to all. And today our topic is chronogram, which is a timeline, right? Susur masa, right? Chronogram, a spatial design and decorative visual of a cultural space. So before we go into the slides, right, I would like to actually refresh your memory on how do you perceive culture. Okay, so when we talk about culture, culture is something that we usually think of something in the past or something in actually, in memories of anything. It could be artifact, it could be, spaces, it could be like certain memories that you address certain people. But culture in general, in terms of design, for example, in architecture, interior design, or even in digital media, for example, okay? So culture is always classified as something that surrounds us, the things that has been created by people before us, and also something that we are currently creating, right? So we classify cultural elements into three categories. So we have artifacts, nature, and spirit. So these three elements is very important for you as a designers, right? So when we talk about artifact is actually a physical being, the physical being of things. It could be from the past, it could be from the present, and then this is a physical thing, so they call it artifacts. And then nature. Okay, don't get me wrong in this sentence, right? Because nature faces here, what I address as nature here is not the greens, it's not the trees in your surrounding. No, nature in this context is actually what is natural for you and what is natural for somebody else. Right, the natural feelings, right? The evokes of the nature feeling for certain people, and also spirits. Whenever we talk about cultural, elements or cultural in general, because usually culture correlates very closely with humans. So it's nature and spirit mostly, right? So in terms of modern architecture and interior design, function and technology are essential features. Of course, we talk about practicality, we talk about sustainability, we talk about how can us be, a green in our design. We are forced in a certain way to actually to save, to preserve the planet, of course. But whenever we talk about preservation of the surroundings of the planet, we also need to talk about preservation of the culture as well. Right? And then, so the designers are using emblematic values in space design to achieve certain goal in creation of the space. So basically, whenever you have your focus on culture, you must be a little bit more focused on what exactly the cultures and what are the magnitude of your design, right? Okay, so we talk about artifact, nature, and spirit, okay? Of course, for today's session, because we have like very limited time, I will talk about Southeast Asia. Like it or not, right? We are blessed with a lavish culture, right? We are blessed with lavish culture, especially Southeast Asia, as compared to the Westernist country, because we know that we have a variety of ethnic groups. So this ethnic group carries a lot of values. It carries a lot of properties, right? We can have like a custom in our daily beliefs, for example, and we have the custom on our daily linguistics, and even we have the most culture portrays in our physical modes. For example, like our clothing, like our belief, like our mural painting patterns and so on. But I will not touch on that so much because that one will be covered by my fellow colleagues. All right. So when we talk about culture in Southeast Asia, for example, look at this picture. Okay. So I named this picture as traditional. It portrays a looks of a girl, right, in cultural or traditional clothing with the cultural settings and also a cultural environment. But then again, this picture is a speaks of the personality of the girls, for example, right? And the same setting also applies to this. Okay, so compare between these two pictures, traditional and modern. And if you're able to actually decipher the meanings or the message behind these images, you can see that this particular portrait is actually projecting the same idea, which is the woman itself as a subject, and then how the surrounding affect her. Okay, so this one and this one, same message, different settings, and different culture, right? So this is my very own perception on how you can actually perceive culture. Culture is actually the things that you are experiencing, right? So for you, for example, for you yourself as a student, what culture means for you might be different from your parents. For example, the learning cultures, the study cultures, even the daily life cultures, right? So that's why I put these two pictures, same meaning, same message, different time and different cultures. Okay, so what you find, you as a student right now, what you find is very cultural for you might be different from your parents or from your grandparents, right? Because of the time we evolve as a human. Okay, so culture surrounding spirits, artifacts, nature. Okay, so recent study has shown that experiential perspective. So the word experiential, I highlight the word experiential here because people actually react in certain way to certain experience. And you as a design students, all right, you are blessed with the ability to actually to create the experience. Okay, so designers, especially interior designers or architect even, right? So they are actually blessed with the ability to create the experience. You design things for people to experience, so you create memories for them. So the recent studies have shown that experiential perspective of a human are neglected in the past. Why is it neglected? Because it was once celebrated last time in the era of the art movement, right? The Bohemian, the Art Deco, and even the Renaissance Renaissance era, for example. All right, so people actually really close to nature. Everything must be, must be lavish in design, must be floral. We have a lot of design elements. Those are the days before the modernization comes in, right? But whenever the modernization era come into our art movement, for example, the art and design movement, so experiential perspective of a human are neglected in the past. Okay, so it has been found that humans are increasingly appreciating design of symbolic meaning. So by all means that it not necessarily we are in the early or 60s or early 70s anymore where people look forward for the technology. Now is a time for us, the taste or the perception has turned around. So we look for something that more have the symbolic meaning to evoke certain feeling of pleasure, enjoyment, fantasies, and even imaginary. Okay, so aesthetic demands more than just practical function, meaning that we are tend to be attracted to aesthetic values rather than practical function. Right? Yes, we were once into practical function, but then again, we come back to the era where we actually enjoy a little bit more different. It goes back to those era where we goes for cultural things, for example. So this not only apply in architecture, but then again, it also applies to every design field, right? It could be product design, it could be digital design, even media, right? Okay, so the key features that I will talk, there's a lot of key element actually, but I will just talk about these three things whenever you come into a practical practicality of designing a cultural spaces. Okay, so the first one is function, practicality, and also human analysis. Function is function. So basically, this is the very means of design principle. Function come first, and then practicality, of course, to ease the function. And then we also need to be sustainable in practicality in designing a space, for example, and even designing a media, for example, right? And the most important thing is the human analysis, the human factor, because we as a designers, we don't create or we don't design things for animal, we design things for humans. So basically, human analysis is plays an important part of this design when we talk about cultural design. So let's talk about human, right? Okay, when we talk about humans, there's always about memories, feeling, and collective nature. Okay, so memories is what I refer to as a remembrance of something, right? Remember of something, a place. It could be a thing, a physical thing, an area, a time, maybe, or even certain someone, right? And these memories will evoke feelings. Okay, and feelings also supported by collective nature. Collective nature, that means bits and pieces for a human, especially, right, to make them recall for some memories in the past. Okay, so when we want to actually create a space for cultural space, okay, it always goes back to the memories, feelings, and collective nature of a design. Okay, so these two pictures shows the same thing. It's a cafe. Okay, so I believe if you can see on the right hand side here, right, this is a custom, or this is very customary or very normal for you as a student right now, which is a cafe looking like very modern, the one in the right hand side, right? Whilst the cafe that on the left hand side, okay, it more customary for your grandfather. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here, if you are going to be inside the facilities in the left-hand side, you might feel that you are out of place because it doesn't evoke certain memories for you, because it doesn't have anything to relate to, right? But with memories, you can actually go to certain places like on the left-hand side and makes you remember of your maybe late grandfather or things like that, right? But that is what I try to actually explain to you in terms of custom and also what is culture to different group of people. You as a student might find that on the left hand side is very customary for you, it's very normal for you, but not to the older generations. But for the older generation, on the left hand side, it's more customary for them and also very familiar with them, and they feel more comfortable, right? So that's why I said memories, collective nature will evoke certain feelings. Okay, so there is a principle of whenever you design something that you want to play with people feelings, right? Memories. And then looking at this picture, this is basically a combination between this and, let's say, if left picture and right picture, they got married and this is their son. Okay, so basically this is the fusion look of new age cafes. So it's still the same concept, open kitchen. You can see people preparing your food, but also with a touch of modernization. You can see a lot of new materials, new settings, new way of lightings, and also there's some cultural element that has been put together, such as the batik patterns you can see over there, and also the materials of the design materials, so the surroundings. So the surrounding make it looks more like, well, it's a post modern, or as a fusion of cultural and also modern. All right, so you can see this kind of setting, but this is very common actually. You can see this all over the world. They start to actually explore this in the back. I think more than 5 years ago, they start to actually go for this kind of design. Okay, so when we talk about culture inspired space, right? Culture inspired space, culturally inspired space. Okay, so when we talk about culture, it's very specific. Culture is actually very specific to a certain group of people, certain group of ethnicity, for example. Okay, so it may have a very good market response in certain cultural contexts. For example, let's say if you do some batik motif and you put it into somewhere in Indonesia, so that can be really celebrated because people can relate. And the poor market performance in other cultural contexts when a space can stand for themselves without extra explanation. So meaning that, let's say if you put some cultural element which is very close to you, for example, like I said just now, batik in Indonesia, so people can actually celebrate that and then can appreciate that more as compared to you take the batik from Indonesia and you put it in somewhere in Iran maybe, right? So people cannot relate. So the design skill of choosing proper social signifiers is important for you as a designers. Okay, so the word social cultural signifiers is highlighted here. So please bear in mind that this is the thing whenever you wanted to do a cultural team building or the cultural team spaces. Let's say if your lecturers come to you and give you some, some briefs saying that you have to design certain culture with a cultural impact on certain design, study about the social signifiers that surround you, right? So it's also important as function and aesthetic attractions. So basically the word function is still there. Whatever we design, doesn't matter how lavish or how heavy is the culture is, right? We still need to think of the functions because we are actually designing a functional space or a functional thing for a human, right? Okay, so when we talk about the social signifiers, this is a view of Hagia Sophia, this one in Turkey, right? You can see the function of this is actually a mosque, all right? It was designed in such a way which using 100% local material and designed in such a way to evoke the feeling of majestic, okay? They have a lot of patterns here. They have a lot of tectonics of the material being put together. But then again, the things has been designed in such ways where it evoke the feeling of majestic. That's why sometimes whenever you go into a mosque or a church, or depends on whatever you believe. Let's say if you come to a very very rough patch in your life, and then you feel that you need to go and seek for peacefulness, you always go to this kind of religious area or religious places because it evokes the sense of calming, right? So whenever you're in that particular spaces, you feel differently. The aura is different. So that is how the surrounding can affect you. Not only for a mosque, for this one is actually the view from Sanggarada Familia. This one is actually internal of Sanggarada Familia, right? So it is a church actually. So you can see the same kind of mood, the same kind of feelings with the play of the tectonics of all the material, the cultural ornaments, the colored glass and things like that, right? So all this has been put together to evoke such a feelings. So please remember, whenever you need to design a cultural space that actually relate to certain contexts, for example, in this case, religious, right? There was some feeling that you aimed for. So whenever you design, right, you need to have your directions to certain feelings or certain things that you want people to experience. So this is just one example, right, of religious space. But of course, when we talk about cultural space, there were a lot more nature of space that you will encounter during your studies and even in your work time, right? So the keyword here is practicality and functions. Okay, even the pictures here is actually you can see the combination between the materials, tectonic of materials, the dark wood, and also patterns, right, which actually evokes the certain feeling for cultures as well. Okay, so when we talk about in the earlier age, all right? So last time, all right, last time people actually design houses, for example, in this context, houses, okay, uh, they design things based on their surroundings. For example, the one in the left-hand side is actually an old traditional house, ancient house in Scotland. And the one in the right-hand side corner is actually a very typical house in Egypt. Okay, so basically design relates or correlates with their surroundings, materials, climates, and things like that. Okay, so this one I think very familiar. On the left hand side, I think this one is actually from Thai. It's the village area in Thailand, and then one on the right hand side is actually in Indonesia. Okay, so these are the things that you can see from the old traditional architecture or old traditional design. Right, the design focus more on the function. Right, the aesthetics come later. Right, so design based on the function, as long as the shelter can actually resist the water from the rain, can actually withstand the climate, then it's good for a house, to for a place or a space that people can inhabit. All right, okay, so when we talk about all those kind of design last time, traditional design, this word vernacular comes in my mind. All right, so I believe most of you have heard of this theory of vernacular architecture or vernacular design. So vernacular design is actually a theory that broadly represent architectural non-conformity. Okay, in other words, this thing is not taught in the books. The theory is that any form of architecture that does not allow the conformist recognized ways of architecture as taught generally by modern architecture literature. So by all means that imagine it like 200 or 300 years back, okay, we don't have any guidelines to how to design a house. We don't have any guideline on how to design an interior of a house. We don't know what exactly can help us to make the house cooler, for example, right? So people just do things or just design their houses, design their buildings, or design their interiors as per se, right? Based on their surroundings. They go outside, they look at their surrounding, they stay there for a year and see what's happening or what's going on in a year. And then they design the things or houses or spaces or areas based on their climatic and also experience, right? So we call that a vernacular design. So vernacular design can be seen in a lot. I'm sorry for the quality of the posters actually, because it's very small pixel. Okay, this vernacular architecture has been practiced in each and every continent of the world, right? So basically what I'm saying here is each and every ethnic groups, they have their own way to design their houses, okay, their spaces based on their climate. So if you can do more research on this, that will be beautiful. All right, we can see how the technology has evolved from very little technology applied, and then the vernacular technology comes in, and then it evolved until the modern house that we have today, and we actually using the vernacular architecture concept, modernize it and application into our today's world of design. Okay, so I'm pretty interested in actually reading about all these traditional houses, why it designed in certain way, why the shape of igloo is round, why the shape of teepee is the triangle like that. So basically, this will carry a lot of values and properties, and it could be beneficial for you whenever you actually designing a space, right? Especially like a cultural space. Okay, for example, this is just some configuration that I managed to found. Okay, so how people actually design their roof, and then the no house forms and house forms, right? The configuration. So this is basically what has been experienced, or what has been experimental things that has been done from people from before us, right? And then the same also goes to the Rumah Melayu. So this is actually a cross section of a Rumah Melayu in Malaysia. And then it was designed in certain ways, right? Whether, mostly Rumah Melayu in Malaysia, it was designed in a way it correlates to the environment of the state. For example, the house in Pahang is different from the house in Perak, right? And those people in Terengganu, which is actually the shoreline people that actually live nearby the sea, the house is different as well. Okay, but the principle is the same, right? They have like a elevated floorings, they have like a high pitch roof for ventilation, and then their design of the roof is actually has been created or has been designed in certain way to actually to repel the rainwater, to withstand the weather, and so on. Right, that's why if you have a chance to come to Malaysia, or maybe even in your in Indonesia, right, go to visit all these traditional houses, right? You will be amazed how cool it is, right? Because I've been into one kampung house, right? It feels like it's so cool as compared to outside. So basically what I'm saying here is the vernacular architecture that actually depends on human anthropometrics, right, have taken effects into the comfort level in the house, right? So this part right here is actually very beneficial for you as interior designers, for example, need to implement. Maybe you don't have control for the structural part, but then again, in the internal part, you still have the control and you can still manipulate all the natural elements around you. Okay, so did you notice that your memories not only about people or event and certain acts? Okay, we talk about architecture and memories. Sometimes when we do architectures, okay, memories comes first, right? Not only about people or event and certain acts, but it's related to a certain place, building, park, hallway, room, or piece of furniture. Okay, this is more on architecture of history. I'm giving you some principle of what you might want to look into whenever you design a cultural spaces. Okay, so whenever it correlates to all these things like place, building, park, hallway, room, or even pieces of furniture, right? You need to understand how spaces work. Okay, you need to understand how spaces work and how they deliver the message, how individuals respond to this when they conduct their daily life. So this is what contains in one specific spaces that you're about to design. Understanding of the spaces, how space work, how they deliver the message, how individuals respond to this when conducting their daily life, and how people move around the space and interact with object or people. So this is all correlated. Imagine that the space and the human is one living organism. So everything is correlated with each other's. Okay. So whenever you actually manage to deliver these key points in your design, meaning that you successfully has designed a space where it's lively, right? Evoke certain feelings. So you achieve your design goals, right? So I will talk a little bit more about Atkan Ganakan. I hope that I pronounce it properly, right? So he's an architect actually. He's an architect. In his word, he quoted that, I quoted that, I believe our memories are the most important factors in process of forming our visual preference and emotions, right? So memories, visuals, and emotions. I try to interpret our past. So mostly by, if you look into this profile of Khan Ganahan, he actually do a lot of project which evokes memories. Okay, the memories using the contemporary architectural language until it arrives at the point where it becomes familiar and can trigger our emotions, right? So on the left hand side, on the right hand side, you can see this is all his work, right? So how the colors play, the geometrical shape really bring us back to the early 60s or 70s, very retro like that, right? So he liked to work with this kind of concept, right? But there's a lot more other architects who actually mastering in designing cultural space, right? So that one you can look up by yourself. Okay, so these two example of interior spaces. Okay, sometimes whenever you actually wanted to design things that relate to certain emotion or bring back certain memories, okay, it's not only the design itself, it's a tectonics of things, right? The material, the arrangement, the space planning, for example, even the natural lights, right? And each and every bit and pieces of design comes together and will help you to achieve your design goal. For example, in the left hand side here, right, this was actually, the building was actually in China. I can't remember the name of the building, but this building was actually built with the roof tiles of the torn down village, right? Last time it was like a heavy, they have like a village, and then the village was actually bring down, and then what they did was they collect all the roof tile and make the roof tile as the wall. If you can look into the picture, you can see that the roof tile is actually becoming the wall. So the material of the roof tile that has turned into the wall evokes certain memories. So it enhances the value or the romanticism of the spaces, right? The same also goes to the right hand side picture, where the setting is actually very natural setting with a very natural material, which can be easily relatable to a certain culture. For example, like us, Malaysia and Indonesia, we rely a lot on the building material of wood, rotan, and things like that, right? So this is some example. And the same also goes to these three images, right? So these three images, the first two images starting from the left-hand side is actually a gallery, right? But also these two project here also using the same concept of vernacular architecture, right? You can see there's opening on the top, and then there's a brilliant play of material and the tectonics of material that have been put together, right? That actually can evoke certain feeling, and also to bring back the memories of the traditional houses, for example. All right. And then on the very far right, that actually a temple. It doesn't look like a conventional temple, but then again, it is a temple. What happened here is the feeling of calmness, like I said before, when I show you the Hagia Sophia and also the Sagrada Familia, right? When you enter religious places, you have that kind of feelings where majestic, peaceful, and calm. And then the right picture on the very far right, right, is the same feelings, right? But interpreted in a different way. Okay, the usage of material, the usage of the space itself, the measurements, for example, it doesn't have to be really big or really majestic, but it carries the same values of feelings, right? And then, okay, so this one is not so much. This is just what I found during my research, all right? So this is actually a portrait of old traditional Egyptian house, actually. On the left-hand side is where the people start to live in the house. I would say that those era we live by what we need only. So this is just a very basic principle of habitable spaces. Okay, so on the left hand side is where the aesthetics come into places. The first feature on the left hand side is more on the living, basic living criteria. The second part is also basic living criteria, but then again, the appreciation of art and decorative element has been implemented in. All right, and the same also revolutionized from these two images to this kind of images, where you can see on the left hand side is also an Egyptian theme houses, but then again it was decorated in such way it carries a lot of elements, design elements, and also patterns, and even the color scheme. And the one on the right hand side is actually the modern interpretation of traditional Egyptian house concept, right? So basically, it's the same thing. It traveled all the way from these images right here, from nothing, just the basics of living, to the appreciation of art and more modernized look of art, and then the contemporary design of Egyptians concept design contemporary, right? So we come to the romanticism in cultural design vista. Okay, romanticism is something that I believe you guys have heard of romanticism before. So the shape of the building has its own characteristics. Okay, any shape of building, any shape of space, any shape of interior spaces have their own characteristics. So romantic design emphasizes strong emotion as a source of aesthetic experience, putting the new stress on emotions such as fear, horror, wonder, and experience by a sublime of nature. So by all means that you can see that whenever a building have a characteristics, okay, romanticism oftenly applies to the building that wanted to share a stories. For example, like a memorial, right? Memorial of a war, for example. Okay, well, let's say if you have a museum that actually a memorial museum of war, the museum itself has been designed, should be designed in the romanticism in architecture design, so that it can bring back memory, because it correlates together with emotions like horror, wonder, and then fear, for example. So if you Google, or you can do your research on Memorial Park, for example, Memorial Park, Memorial Museum, you can see a lot of romanticism has been applied. Okay, so for you as an interior designer, it is important for you to be poetic whenever you are actually doing a cultural design. Be poetic with your tectonics of material, be poetic with your space and things like that. Right? So it's you think that to think that about what makes your work poetic. So it's the way of guide your occupant through. Okay, what do you want your people the people to feel? You create the experience, right? As they engage with your architecture features on their experiential journey, that one is actually up to you. So whenever you design the spaces that you want intentionally want them to actually experience or feel the certain emotion, fear, maybe stress or whatever it is, right? You make sure that you achieve that by having the tectonics of materials, arrangement, even the nature of the spaces, sizes, and things like that, right? So is it the way you use and you play with light within your work, where your occupants to experience it in new ways? So light also part of the design. Okay, so or is there a certain meaning conveyed through your work? Let's say if you have a feature wall that you wanted to tell a story, for example. Okay, so whether you can actually deliver it or not. So where you use metaphor or symbolism to express a community or a culture sentiment, right? It doesn't have to be paintings on the wall, it doesn't have to be a wallpaper on the wall, but it can use a metaphorical or symbolism item that can actually help you to tell the stories. Okay, and then this is Neri and Hu, right? Neri and Hu believe that the material should relate to the human coordination. So then again, this one is actually more on the architecture side. How this Neri and Hu architects design their spaces based on the poetic of material. You can see that the material is perfectly arranged and choose. Even the color is well coordinated to bring such a memories or to evoke the feelings of poetic in their design, right? The same also goes to the internal side of that building. So fearless approach to material experimentation and sensitivity to how material communicate with people. And then you need to be a little bit more fearless whenever you try to explore on design, because in design for me, right, there's no right or wrong. So what works for you might not works for me, and what might work for me might not works for you. So material plays important part. Okay, choose your material wisely, but I'm not going to talk about the material in detail. My colleagues will do so. All right. And then no, the most famous cultural style of today's world, of course, the Indocene, right? This is the cultural collision between the Southeast Asia and the French culture, right? And then if you ask me, okay, if you ask me how do I start whenever I wanted to design a cultural spaces, I would say listen to the people, reanimate and retell their stories. And with that, I end my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Idlan. It's a very exceptional presentation, and I really like the poetic delivery of your presentation. Okay, so let's just move on to the second presentation. We will address your questions at the end of all the presentation. So let's move on to the second speaker. Our second speaker is Mr. Noor Aslan Kasrov, Bachelor of Interior Architecture and Master of Art in Interior Design. And Mr. Aslan holds working experiences since 2006 as a designer at various architectural firms in Kuala Lumpur. And his works are mostly associated with digital media and exploring ideas in depth. And in addition, he has acquired an experience in working with digital manufacturing technologies, such as 3D printing, laser cutting, and CNC milling during his postgraduate studies. And he's also involved in art and event management since 2015 as a partner at Prototype Gallery. And he believes that buildings personify and embody the diverse cultures that exist today. He founded Aslan Kasrov Studio in 2011 to reflect the power and endless potential of human imagination. And he is leading the design of all AKS projects and working in collaboration with highly skilled architects, designers, and makers. So Mr. Aslan, I would like to hand over the spotlight to you. The time is yours.
All right, thank you. Wait. Right.
Azlan, I think you have to go back to the slide just now. And what you do is you click on the bottom part, kan?
Right. Okay.
The top bottom right corner.
All right.
That's the full screen.
Yep.
I think the file is a bit too heavy, is it?
Yeah.
Or oh, okay, it's coming. Yeah. Or maybe you want to while you loading this, do you want me to help you control the share screen for the
Wait, I think it's just the
the internet lah. So.
Okay.
If you have the PDF file, maybe you can send it to me and I can help you share the screen if you have it.
Otherwise, I was using
You want me to help you share?
I think it's already done.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, make it full screen. Yeah.
All right. Everyone can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I will explain to you about the chronogram spatial design of culture space on case study. All right. So okay. So what I will explain to you is the case study is about learning from the past. So how the past in also the present and the future as well. So what we can learn from our culture past and through mostly going to focus on Malaysia museum direction. So I will explain to you about how Malaysia Museum, how they towards for the future as well. So using the artifact, the material that they have it. So actually is the museum and community is very important. So then the museum community need to improve using the collection. So the lecture, publication, and other relevant activities such as interactive using the community and museum. So to enhance back the museum. So currently is in Malaysia is museum is visited is by foreigner mostly, but and the school student and some for study, everything is not really close to the community. Current museum is not very close to community. If you say if all these do some survey as well, like how many people went to museum back in the days as well. So but it's because it's not really attractive. The museum is not like other museum like in the Western country or in the UK, in the Australia or in the Berlin, everything. So there's not much interactive in the museum. So how this community want to learn their past if they are unable to explore the museum using the collection that the country have or the lecture or any publication. So that's why is in Malaysia Museum is they need to be redefined, the design and the curation to make it very timeless. All right, to make it also is maybe in the certain way how the community view the museum. All right, okay, and then when it's happened is mean when this improving between museum and community. So this it will develop the nation that value the culture in everyday life. Also tell the story of their past. All right, it mean they appreciate their past and what is mean they are very culture type of a person. It's not to just to be like modern or technology, but to is mean the fundamental of the background of the culture. Okay, culture. Then there's a lot of Malaysian museum in Malaysia. So but there's like a National Museum of Malaysia, Sultan Abu Bakar Museum, and Islamic Art Museum. But in the picture, on the left side is actually Terengganu State Museum. So it's quite huge. If I'm not sure if you went there, it's very traditional. It's just it's need improvement. The architecture is really good for a museum, but in the inside and the interior is not to enhance. But for but the two case study I will be presented to you is actually Sultan Abu Bakar Museum and also National Textile Museum. I'm not going to present it in Terengganu State Museum because I think it still need a bit of improvement. Right, but these two museums, I think is I will give you insight about Abu Bakar Museum Pekan. All right, then Think City Researcher Report. Okay, Think City is actually is non-profit organization. Is actually to enhance, to give a grant for entrepreneur or any who own the old building in Butterworth, Penang, Kuala Lumpur, and in Johor Bahru as well to enhance space, to enhance space for culture or to repurpose their space. Okay, this is Think City role. But Think City is under Khazanah Nasional. Khazanah Nasional is actually Malaysia Investment Malaysia Investment, all right, Malaysia Investment Company. So this is Think City under Khazanah. So this is Think City is they try to develop their all like old town Kuala Lumpur into a very attraction and very cultured. All right. So okay, but they already involved in National Museum space planning as well. So what they quoted in their report is they tried to repurpose back the National Museum is to history museum or inventory project of the old museum. So they want to reconvert the National Museum, but the aim is to safeguard the site and remembers place in its represent. So then is because the site is surrounded by very like tall building, very high-rise buildings. So but this site is they want to safeguard the site, and to also is actually near to Lake Garden. So is also to have an organic connection between form of botanical garden. So it's mean a museum and the garden, something like that. That's what they are planning for National Museum, but still not going on. So what the space program is about, how important of space program is actually they try to on the left side here, they study the whole Malaysian museum, the majority whole Malaysian museum. They come up with the National Museum space planning, but are still in progress. So its main and the primary forest is mean how the nature is mean more like kind of a Paleolithic and Neolithic era. So then also man and the ocean is mean man in the ocean is during the how and the second here is mean the ocean is shipboard is how the back in the days like Malay on the sea surf, how they try to live in this near to the sea, everything. Then also the emergence of the city state is mean the Chandi is in the Kedah Tua, or all the old civilization is in the Melaka, Kedah Tua, and Langkah Suka. Then all this emergency state all around Malaysia, they want to extract. Also the polyphonic nature of religious tradition. This one is mostly is how is really religion come to what we call is the Tanah Melayu or before Malaysia. So this one is before the Hinduism, Buddhism. Then there's a Islamic come. So there's the story how it going to be told through the National Museum. Then also the arrival of the West. So the arrival of the West is from Portuguese, Netherlands, and the British. All right. Then the second, the final space program is living in Malaysia is habitat the culture in how it's merged in the culture pot in Malaysia is like between Malay, Chinese, India, and few other ethnic. All right, so this is how they want to reprogram the National Museum, but this is generally in their proposal. All right, so my case study, this is good case study to reflect back and what they are what they are the Think City research. All right, is Sultan Abu Bakar Museum is in Pekan, Pahang. All right, so the case study one is this one is in Pahang. So this they have a building. So this building is in 1929 is the resident of British resident. All right, so then it's renovated and converted into the resident of late Sultan Abu Bakar, and it's become the official state palace. Then after in 1976, the Pahang State Museum Board took over the building and it converted into a museum. So now we know the museum as Sultan Abu Bakar Museum. Right. So because the condition is still need what we call is conservation. So conservation of the building, the old building, because in the architectural here is took, I think it's converse the renovation, it took around 4 years, but they have to identify the building structure first. So the building is a load-bearing wall and the pillar system as well. So then they have to identify the roof structure is mostly into two types, namely stiff roof and a flat roof. So flat roof is mostly in the porch, right? So there's also two type of staircase. Stay in the window. So there's a stone stair at the front and also a wooden stair in the inside. All right. So then all the door is made of a wood and the height of 90 inch. All right. So then also the window is mostly the window frame is mostly made of wood. So they need to have to identify this one when they do the renovation. So the conversation, then they have to consider all the existing building. So then renovation. So this is renovation is took place on 2008 to 2012 is a 4 years, but it's not on the curation. So it's not in the interior as well. So interior is from 2012, I think 2013 until 2016. It's been a long period of time. So this means the time when you create some culture space, so you need to reflect to respect the condition of the building and what you can upgrade. That's why the renovation is took I think it took for 8 years total, 8 or 10 years total for even though it's a small building, it's a small type of square feet. So for this organization or renovation is there's a chief curator, scenography and architects, interior design and logo and identity wayfinding signage. You have to have this type of team to renovate the to turn into museum. So there's a lot more other like lighting designer, everything. So this one is you as a interior consultant, you need to think how you're going to communicate with all other consultant, all right, to make it very seamlessly. All right. So then the objective of the museum same like as the Malaysian museum direction is mean the museum and the community is mean the objective for this museum is to make people friendly, also to promote the heritage and the culture of Pahang. All right. So also to engage with the local community to provide the learning and understanding, also the enjoyment of the beautiful gallery and like not just the interior, also the spaces, but the artifact, the surrounding, the large garden, and what is also the art as well. So because the museum is also can bring the economy as well. So don't look into just art in general, or the is the community also is lifted the local economy. Is the most important part is how this museum and community can bring to boost out the economy. So without the economy, we cannot do the high renovation, good renovation without the money, right? So this is also the fundamental of it. But we how we appreciate the value, same is how we appreciate the economy. So why is also is the Sultan Abu Bakar Museum is actually is connected with another 4 museum in walking distance. Also is open in 2016 as well. So it's like a Masjid Sultan Abdullah Botanical Museum and Children Museum and Watercraft Museum. There's a lot of surroundings. So this one can boost a lot of economy. It's not just one museum. So is when you have a museum, you need to identify all surrounding. Okay, in Space Program Museum is in this museum, in Sultan Abu Bakar Museum is the first one, the space is the Pahang Sultanate. So it's been what is the collection of Pahang Sultan. Then the fashion and textile, ecology and aboriginal and ceramics, art and culture of East Coast of Malaysia. So then there's added spaces like workshop building, auditoriums, space, cafe, office block, and garden sculpture. All right. So when they propose the building, the space program, they need to you need to identify what artifact that you have. And what artifact and what you want to show. So this one is how to make it very interesting space program. So this is the content of the space. So then is how is the flow as well. So this when you decided what type of space program you want to create, it is make sure it's reflect back into the surrounding. It mean in this case it's mostly related to the Pahang and the East Coast. All right. Then this one is mostly where is the Pekan or the Pekan Pahang located. So this is Kuala Lumpur. This is Pahang. So it's in the East Coast of Malaysia. So also this is Museum Sultan Abu Bakar. So there's another 3 museums all around. So and this is some is being renovated, some is already done, some is okay. So this one is near to the river as well. So you need to come up with the surrounding. So this is a space of the Pahang Sultanate. So this is living area. Back in the day, it will call Dewan Mengadap. So this one is where the Sultan have a Dewan Mengadap on here. So now it's converted into Pahang is a living room for Sultan. So this one, another gallery for Pahang Sultanate is portrait of successive queens. So there's the generation of Sultanate. So queens. Okay, the queens. So how they play with the rich. Do you look into the history, the color they choose? This one is very gold. So because the Sultanate here we are using gold, yellow and gold. So to represent the richness and the royal color, what we call is royal color. But in also this one is how they play with the color, like the dark to enhance the portrait of the queens. All right, so to have a darker color. So also the Pahang Sultanate is they play polo club. There's a polo club. So this they also make it like a sculpture of a polo. Then is put the installation of polo to reflect how the polo match they use back in the days. All right. Then also the Sultanate Pahang use they come up with the in the space they come up with art installation of lembing. So lembing, there's a lot of representation is the crest of Pahang crest. Then also this in the days, because we are also now we still using a lembing for the represent for the guard in the guard in the palace, everything. So this there's the symbolic of art installation. When this is then the fashion and textile. So fashion and textile of Pahang, they mostly use all the the culture of like Chinese to showcase like Malay, Indian. So what is fashion and the textile of in Pahang and in Malaysia in general. So this is ecology and Aboriginal spaces. So they mostly focus on the artifacts of ecology that found in Pahang. Also the artifact of Aboriginal people, okay, and how their behavior, their everyday life as well. So then mostly is very tone color, because they just want to focus into the artifact. All right. Then they play with the lighting as well, so to enhance the artifact. So this one is ecology. This one is to have the interactive section for, because Aboriginal have a different dialect. So from the current in each stage we have a different dialect. I think it seems like in Indonesia as well have a different people dialect and language as well. So this one is they put is such interactive, so to make the community interact in the in the museum, what we call the museum interact with the visitor as well. All right, then this one is they put also to get the sculpture. Is mean art sculpture. So the museum hiring like artists from Pahang to replicate how Aboriginal like the sculpture, how the people and using a sculpture. All right, make it very interesting. It's meant to mix between the old artifact and contemporary arts. Is very interesting. So this one is ceramic. So this ceramic is mostly is in the display is just to focus on the ceramic, the silver plate during back in the days in the Sultan Abu Bakar, in the what we call in the palace, what type of silver plate and ceramic that you use in that time and that period. Okay, so then it's just to showcase the then is art and culture of East Coast. So this one is the headdresses of the Makyong and Menora, so Saman of Kelantan, but is also similar like Thailand, because Kelantan is very north of near to the Thailand, very north of Malaysia. So it's just a border. The what we call is the similarity between the culture is almost similar. So like if you see, it's like how the Thailand, okay. So in Kelantan as well. So this is East Coast. They use a shadow puppet. We call it wayang kulit. Okay, so this is they showcase the wayang kulit how in the art and culture of East Coast. Okay, then garden sculptures. So then this one is mostly a garden sculpture. They put all contemporary art sculpture artists around Pahang. So they try to get the museum tried to like hire like Raja Shariman or any other Pahang artists. So to showcase their contemporary art. So it's not just artifact from the past, but also bring a contemporary art into the museum surrounding to appreciate into their own art sculpture. All right. So this is some part is like a hose and other part surrounded the garden sculpture. Okay. Then also, when you design a museum or design any type of space, commercial space, it means you need to have a logo and wayfinding. So in this part is the museum try to the company who hired by the museum is try to design the logo that reflect back the culture, history, and geography. All right. So the museum logo is mostly inspired by what we call prahu or fisherman boat. So so this is how the wood carving in Malaysia as well. All right. Okay. So then this is then the look also the museum shop is because the elephant is very vital role in the history of Pahang. So also the then the how they design the logo is to make it a very playful as well. So is meant very refreshing to incorporate like this elephant and the crest of Pahang as well in the different type of color. So also the museum cafe as well. So how they design the logo as well is like they use burung biblis is whistling duck. What we call is whistling duck. So is okay. So this is chosen for the mascot of the museum. All right. So to is for the cafe also is also in the whistling duck body. They try to create a pattern as well. So create a pattern from Tenung Pahang Diraja. It means royal clothes of Pahang. So to represent, to make it a very what we call is very playful. At the same time, you have this type of intricate type of design. It means very well thought of the design. Okay. So also is like to bring back the memories. So mostly is how you design is mean to bring back the memory is like to bring back like some Jawi section into the new building because it's already been demolished as well. So to bring back some memory, but to enhance as well. All right. So this one is a section to every section they use a different type of graphic. For example, ecology and masyarakat of orang asli is they try to give a lot of graphic to also ceramic as well. So to represent like ceramic, but with the background, the texture, the color of the ceramic. So this in every section, how they put wayfinding, what we call the graphic. So the wayfinding or the graphic of wayfinding is very important as well in interior design, or you design a space. All right. So also this one they use a song. What we call is fabric, the pattern like a songket or how the back in the days, and they combine with how the wayfinding as well with the old picture of around the Pahang, they can find it. So it's very interesting as well how you can reflect back into the space environment. Okay, bring back the culture in new, fresh way. Okay, so this one is the video of Pahang culture. So I will play you the Pahang culture video. Hopefully you can hear the sound. So you can see how chaotic is the space is with the environment as well. So how they play with the light and the shadow as well. Okay, so I'll just go the quick one. National Textile Museum for case study 2. So this is National Textile Museum is located at the in the Kuala Lumpur. All right. So this one is mostly the architecture building is Mongol Islamic element. So is also using a very like red and white plaster. All right. So is the design is actually is by English architect A.B. Hubeback. Also alongside built with the Sultan Abdul Samad building. All right. Then building this been used for 7 type of function before it turned into textile museum in 2007. All right. Then the space program is actually there's a 4 main gallery, 1 temporary gallery. One is Pohon Budi Gallery, Pelangi Gallery, Teluk Berantai Gallery, Ratnasari Gallery, and Sandira Gallery. And there's a cafe, shop, office, and resource center also. Then I will explain more on the space program after this. Then there's a site plan, which is where it's located, is actually in downtown KL. So there's near to the river of between Klang, right? Then this is the layout plan of the ground floor. So this one is Pohon Budi Gallery here. So when you enter here, so this is Pohon Budi Gallery, and here is Gallery Pelangi. So there's a cafe and gift shop and few other like security room. And this one as well is a Ratnasari Gallery on the first floor. All right, and here in the green color is a Ratnas Gallery, and the pink one is Teluk Berantai, and the Sendera Gallery is here is temporary gallery if there's an exhibition. So then this is main. This is how it's gonna looks like. Is the one that the picture I show before here is actually is at the back entrance, but the front is based on the entrance of the glass. So Pohon Budi Gallery is actually is the origin of the textile from prehistory. So is using how is trade and the traditional technique. So how they display is using a very how they display very traditional with the equipment. So Pelangi Gallery is mostly exhibit selected heritage collection. So it's like Batik or the Chinese or community or Baba and Nyonya and Indian as well. So this is just to show display, and they will use a mannequin and a wall display and some very flat information and the lighting. Teluk Berantai is actually is like is focus on the richness of beauty of Malay heritage collection is mean like Tekat or Kelingan and Kain Tenun, Six and Songket, a few other, but it's mostly to display in like kind of an artwork representation of the artwork with the people on the seat sitting in the center. All right. Then Ratnasari Gallery is mostly exhibit the jewelry item or personal ornament. So in various ethnic group in Malaysia, so they just display like jewelry.
Sorry, Mr. Aslan, for interrupting. Maybe can you speed up your presentation, because the time is quite limited and we have a lot of questions to be answered.
All right, it's almost end. So this is my end slide. So
okay, thank you.
All right, so I just give this one is the pantun is puan bertanjak bunga melati diampu pula dengan kain, bukan aku takut mati sesalku tidak puas bermain. So this one is actually from Usop Adukade in 17th century manuscript. So is located in is already owned by a British museum, and also in some part also in Singapore Museum. All right, that's my end of my presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
We can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Aslan. Very interesting projects you had, and I believe you have really given a lot of new insights to our students. Thank you. And so let's move on to the third presentation today on the subtopic Visual Culture and Decorative Design of a Cultural Space. And this will be brought to you by our third and fourth speaker. Our third speaker is Dr. Fiona Wong Yi Chung, Bachelor of Graphic Design, Master of Art, Doctor of Philosophy, with experiences as an illustrator at DDB Needham, Auckland, New Zealand, and lecturer at Sunway University. And as a graphic designer, she has always seen herself as an educator and researcher, as she believes in the preservation, conservation, and education of Malaysia's tangible and intangible cultural arts heritage through research and scholarly writings on local art forms. And she incorporates her passion for local cultural arts, design, and crafts in her teachings, as she finds it important to pass on the knowledge to the younger generation. And under the Malaysian government of My Brain 15 scholarship scheme, she has just completed her PhD in visual arts at the University of Malaya, Malaysia. And she has researched on 19th century Malayan shophouse facade and performed a visual study on the wayang kulit Kelantan puppet design for her PhD thesis. So Dr. Fiona, I hand over the spotlight to you. The time is yours.
Hi. Yes, morning. I just realized I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you for the introduction, Diana. Thank you, and also for the invitation as well. Okay, so I believe that we are a bit running behind time. So without further ado, okay, I would like to share with all students of Petra Christian University and also with Diana, basically my topic today, a subtopic from this chronogram. Okay, talk that the four of us colleagues we are actually putting up for the students. Yes. So my topic basically focuses on the decorative visuals of a cultural space, but more specifically on the visual culture aspects. Okay, how it is in relation, okay, to a cultural space. All right. Moving on. Doesn't quite move. Why? Sorry. Sorry guys. Oh, okay, moving. Yeah, it takes a bit of time to load. All right. So yeah, this is basically what I've mentioned. Okay, so what is visual culture? Does anyone of you know this term, this terminology? Are you aware of basically that we are actually surrounded by visual culture, like the visuals that surrounds us, but the visuals that has meanings behind them. Okay, visuals, when we talk about visuals, it includes not just pictures, not just images, but also text as well, like the letterings, the typography as well. Okay, so perhaps I mean your students, you may think like, oh, okay, perhaps you may be wondering what myself and also my colleague Miss BB, will be sharing with you as well, like what you could actually benefit from our talk, and we hope that you would be able to benefit from it, because how in terms of it's the knowledge behind this, and also it's really relevant, and how you could actually apply into your own interior design projects, and also your works, your design works. So it's actually very relevant, okay, if you follow me. All right, so to break it down, the terminology, this phrase, okay, visual, okay, to put it simply, from the Cambridge Dictionary, okay, visual actually means what's related to us, seeing, all right, the sight, seeing what you can see with your eyes. And yes, we are very blessed, to have, our senses, yeah, sensory, all this, call this, the sensory parts in us, okay? And we could see, we are blessed with eyes, we can see, we can smell, we can hear, we can listen, and we can taste, and we can touch, yeah? So the 5 senses, all right? So, but then this relates to what we see, okay? Those of us, again, we are blessed with the power of sight, to actually see things. And when we see things from young, as a baby, and then eventually we become a toddler. And then when we see things like, but how do we understand it? How do we decipher it? Okay, so this is basically based on our, the teachings from the seniors, from the teachers, from the parents, how they teach and how they educate us, from young, okay, in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the lives, values, and also cultural beliefs, traditions, customs, etc. Okay, so you see that what visuals, okay, it actually relates to, a picture, it could be a piece of film or any form of display that's, basically illustrates or accompanies something. So like I said, like text or typography, lettering as well, okay? So that's all part of visual. Then what about culture? So all of us, we know what is culture, right? Kind of like, like general term of it. But then to actually understand what culture is, all right, it's actually, okay, by definition, the ideas, customs, and the social behavior of a particular people or society. So for example, you are in Indonesia, your Indonesian society, okay, and us here in Malaysia, and with our Malaysia society. And we are all multicultural societies, aren't we? Because we have, people from different ethnic groups, different races, different, with ancestors that came from all over the world, okay, and they landed, basically in Indonesia and in Malaysia, all right? So you see that, basically they bring along their customs, their beliefs, their practices, okay, and basically everything, okay, about them, okay, into this land. All right. So it also, culture also means the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. So for example, when we talk about culture, like when we look back again, chronologically speaking, if you know art history or if you know architecture history, okay, when you look back into the times during the Renaissance era, okay, and then later on, there's also we call this like the Baroque, the Rococo eras, and then again later after that the modernism, when modernism comes in, and basically took over the whole of Europe. Okay, and then eventually there's also the other movements that came along, right? So you see, like what also I echoed what Mr. Amirul just now presented as well. So he also mentioned about in terms of the chronology, all right, of all these eras and periods and styles, okay, that we see. That's not only applicable in architecture, but also in all forms of art and design. And it is true, it is so true, all right? Okay, so moving on. So what visual culture again, so basically is, to put it simply, again, is the aspect of culture expressed in visual images, all right? Then, okay, so what is it actually, what does it concern with, like, is basically a study of work that uses art history, humanities, sciences, and social sciences. So it is intertwined with everything that one sees in daily life, okay? In advertising, landscape buildings, photographs, movies, paintings, apparel, you name it, everything that surrounds us, basically everything that who we are, what we wear, what we eat, what we use, the car we ride in and all, etc. Okay, so everything, anything that connects, that's concerned within our culture, that communicates through visual means. When we talk about visual means, the means actually here, it refers to media, the form of it, okay, the type of it, okay. All right, so then, okay, let me now, okay, take you for a kind of a virtual tour around the world. I mean, because, knowing that, it's pretty unfortunate, that the coronavirus, the pandemic started since last year. So then, how it affected the world, globally, and also, how it also affected the people, in our countries. It also handicaps us, like, from traveling, like we are not allowed to just, again, do the things that we used to do. All right. So, okay. Don't worry not. Okay. Let me just take you for a ride around the world virtually. Okay. So again, there's actually, okay, if you look at my slides, okay, I would like you to also appreciate and enjoy the slides, the pictures, the visuals, the images that I've put in. Why? Because it has meanings in it. It has a meaning, like a symbolic meaning or representation meaning behind it. Okay. I will be stopping at each slide in a way, but very quickly, just to ask you why. Okay. Question is, why do I put a window here? All right. If anyone could answer this, okay. So yeah, you're most welcome to always write to me and email me, at any time. But then the question to you, students, why did I put a window here? When I talk about, let us look at the world around us. Okay. we see people from all walks of life, right? Everyone. Okay, so this is again the image that the visual that I accompany my text, you know, and in relation to what I'm sharing with you all now in terms of visual culture. So people, you see, from all walks of life, meaning from all kinds of background, people of all ages, all groups or races, you know, all countries, nations, and etc. Okay, all people, all right, from different backgrounds and also the ethnicities. So this, I believe it would ring a bell to you, I hope. Okay, it could be something we are very familiar and also very proud of, because it's one of your countries, your own nation's cultural heritage. Yeah, and like what Ms. Diana actually mentioned just now, yes, I am a strong advocate of you know, in terms of preservation and conservation of the culture and intangible cultural heritage. But of course, you know, based on Malaysian context, of course, yeah, because that's what I'm familiar with and I'm surrounded by it. But then again, I also embrace all, you know, basically cultures, ethnicities from all around the world. Yeah. So like looking at this, you know, it's like a Balinese, again, kind of a parade, isn't it? Like, you know, and also the, like you would see similarities in this, like the culture in terms of the costumes, you know, or perhaps the rituals, the performances, or the practices, the traditions, that you can actually see echoing in other ethnic groups as well in other parts of the world. You'll be surprised. And like in Polynesian countries, you know, islands as well. So you see, for example, the like the what's it? Who are they? Oh, I can't remember. It just who are these people? The Aborigines in Australia, okay, and also the natives in New Zealand. There's a term for it. Okay, it just doesn't strike me for now. Yes, maybe you would know. Yes, yeah. Okay, so again, people from of all different traditions and cultures. Okay, and you see that this is basically the one of the latest in thing right now, right, with the trends of all this K-pop or these K-dramas. Okay, I'm also one of the fans, by the way. But anyway, yeah. So especially, you know, looking at that, you know, basically into the past. So we talk about chronology and also going back into the past history. And again, I would like to share and emphasize with you all, okay, without the past, there is no present and there won't be any future, right? So we have to understand our past history, we have to appreciate it, and we learn from our mistakes if, you know, they were like wars or this, you know, human errors, okay, in their decisions or whatnot. And you know, and basically we try to improve it to make it better for our world today. All right. So for example, this one you see like this traditional Korean ladies, yeah, in this from the Joseon dynasty and all. Yeah, if you follow K-dramas as well. Okay. Then you have this like people who stand, and you know, these are the people, the groups, ethnic groups who stand by their various beliefs and worldviews. Okay, so like what Mr. Amiru also mentioned just now, in terms of like, like different places, different countries, like you see different architectures, buildings, you know, because again, it was built by the early people, like the ancestors of a certain era, certain period of time, and they carry by them, they stand by, they stood by, you know, their beliefs and their worldviews. And okay, this is a picture of showing the Iban, the Dayak, Iban Dayaks communities. And I believe there's also the Dayak, the Iban Dayaks also in the Kalimantan, right? Also in Indonesia, because I'm from Sarawak. So this is something I'm also proud of in terms of, you know, my my own cultural heritage in Sarawak, in Borneo. Okay, so then you see again, the Ibans, although nowadays the younger generation, they are more modernized in their thinking, they are more highly educated and all, but then they still have their tribes in the kampong, in the villages, and they still live in long houses, and they still practice certain you know, practices, customary practices and all. They have the tattoo, you know, and all, and things like that, you know, and they still do the berjalai, like it's like the rite of passage for the men, the young boys growing into men, but they don't go out and hit hunt anymore, lah. Okay, that's already been banned. They don't hit hunt the heads of the enemies anymore, but they go on their own journey of self-seeking and fulfillment. Okay, so beliefs and worldviews, okay, guys. So we have to know in terms of the cultures, different cultures, their beliefs, their worldviews. We have to understand. We have to try to comprehend. And then we look back into histories and we look at the earliest civilizations, okay, like in India, in China, okay, and also we look at Mesopotamia, in Egypt, ancient Egypt, okay. These are the early civilizations that was recorded, perhaps, you know, in all these documents and whatnot, and in all these archaeological, archives. And these are the civilizations that you will notice a lot of them would have begun near the waters, like by the river, by the sea, yeah, okay, and then they would move inland, okay, to the jungles, okay, and then you also have those who would stay inland, okay, they would stay in the mountains, the hills, and then, you know, they would actually build long houses like this. So this is actually the Iban longhouse, and then you can see why. Would you have any idea or clue why the stilts are so high, so tall, okay? And what about the carvings on the stilts as well? So it also acts as a totem pole, okay? So it's in terms for their rituals, their beliefs, and, you know, is to ward off the evils and, you know, and evil spirits and all. And then the reason why the stilts are so tall, okay, is again to fend themselves from the enemies below. Okay, so again, all these are interconnected with, and also with the surroundings, the environment, and also the social events of that time. Okay, and then you see that also again with all the materials that's used is all very indigenous and vernacular, and also from the natural resources of the Malaysian or Indonesian tropical jungles. Okay. And then we look at other countries, other parts of the world, like in Istanbul, in Turkey. And did you know that Hagia Sophia, okay, like what Mr. Abiru also shared just now, okay, he shared the interior aspects of it, okay? And I'm showing you basically the external view of it. And it's so grand, you know, and it's so magnificent, okay? But then did we know that it was, based on history, okay? That it was the first basilica, okay, for the Christians, the Roman Catholics in the 6th century. Then it turned into an imperial mosque in the 15th century, and then it became a museum in the 20th century. All right, so you see, there's this evolution of, you know, basically a place, the cultural space that has been transformed. And why? Because of social, economical, or whatever political reasons and conditions that actually, encourage the transformation, okay? But then again, not forgetting its past origins and history, right? So then you see, because again, these are the monumental landmarks. These are the the remnants, the leftovers, I would say, you know, of our histories, the past of our ancestors, our forefathers. You know, these are the stories and legends that it carries. Okay, so then, you know, when let's say we visit this Great Wall of China, and then we just go and we just follow the tour group, and if we just kind of look at, oh, it's just just very boring structure, you know, it's just made of bricks, and oh, okay, wow, this long stretch, oh, I've got to travel, so it's so tiring, you know. So but then behind this, do we realize, okay, the stories behind, okay, which dynasty it was during in China, and why it was built in the first place? And did you know how many people have sacrificed their lives building this, this whole stretch of the Great Wall of China? Okay, and why? Because for the Emperor Qin Shi Huang, those of you, if let's say you know the history, right? So again, the stories behind, the legends behind. Okay, and then now back to the present. Okay, do we know that, or do we realize that we are actually surrounded by all these cultures as well? So when we talk about cultures, it's not just traditional culture, or that we read from the textbooks. And I think one of your questions just now, one of your students was asking something like, like how relevant it is, or how to actually apply from, these historical context, how to actually apply in the modern world right now and things like that. Okay, so we would perhaps go into that later with Mr. Abiru, compiling all the questions and trying to answer right now. But at the same time, again, back here, okay, we are surrounded by coffee culture, for example. Okay, what about this? Thrift culture. So we are living in and surrounded by all these cultures every day. Thrift right nowadays is also the trend. Okay, basically it's like mix and match. You can match with this top, and for the girls, yeah, and this skirt or this shorts or whatnot. Okay, so and everything is like, you can actually buy things very cheaply online, or you can buy from these secondhand stores or whatnot. So it's a kind of thrift culture that's going on right now. And then you see, we are so influenced by all this like these bands or music artists, celebrities, K-pops, or even in the States, all this, what they call this, top charts and whatnot. And like, for example, this is the 1960s, all right, and it's a very influential era, okay, in the States, you know, and how it basically kind of, you know, affected and traveled, you know, like the whole of Europe. It spread even like, you know, into this part of the world, you know, the Asian and Southeast Asian continents as well, okay. But why? Because it came again with the traders, or it came with you know, all this perhaps the colonial, like if you look back again into history, right? Like we have all these foreign colonial powers that came, that took over our lands, you know, at a period of time. It was during the 19th, middle or late 19th century, and then up to the early 20th century. Okay, so basically, but then, you know, there's always the good side. There's always two sides to anything. Okay, the good side is they help, you know, set up certain infrastructures or whatnot for the city. They brought in advancement. They brought in some of their Western knowledge and technology, yeah. But then at the same time, our own people, you know, we were colonized perhaps by these foreign powers at that time, and then, you know, but then we eventually came to be independent. And of course, then we then of course fought for independence. Yeah, yay! So we are where we are. And again, okay, I guess you guys would know this as well. Okay, you guys are basically the generation about my daughter's age. Although my daughters are right now in their only the early secondary and still primary school. But then these are basically the culture that you are surrounded in right now, aren't you? You know, basically you live by them. Like this is Demon Slayer. Okay, for those of us if we're really outdated, you know, with the trends. Okay, and what about food? Okay, we are surrounded by food, and we, you know, we visit places, we indulge in them. Okay, so foods like this. Okay, and again, this food, for example, you will see, you know, this nasi kerabu is from Kelantan. Okay, then you have this toasted kaya bread. Okay, it's actually a Hainanese delicacy, you know, and with this kind of a half-boiled egg, and then we have this nasi lemak. Again, it's very local. Okay, I believe as well in Indonesia, right, as well as in Malaysia, then we have this nasi impit, you know, and all this. So you see, it's a mixture, a fusion of cultures. Why? But because we are a multicultural society. Okay, so visual culture is concerned with visual events in which information, meaning, or pleasure is sought by the consumer. So you guys, we are all consumers in an interface with visual technology. So when the terminology here, technology, refers to anything from oil painting to a mural art, a mural on the wall, okay, or even to internet. So these are all technology. All right. So moving on, visual culture is not limited to the study of images or media, but it extends to everyday practices of seeing and showing, especially those that we take to be immediate and unmediated. All right, guys? So it's not just limited to only what we see, like visuals, or we think it's just images or media or whatnot, but it's everyday practices, guys. Everything that surrounds us. So in other words, visual culture centers, on the everyday experience of the visual. So this includes everything we see, for example, in a properly, nicely curated art exhibition, okay, these are, that's supposed to put in the captions, I forgot, but these are definitely, you recognize these as movie posters. So movies, yeah, movies from all around the world. Performances, okay, and this is actually why I call it Kelantan, my PhD thesis study, but I look at the puppet designs, okay, because that's my field. So I'm not a performing arts person, but I am a visual art. So looking at the design aspects, then when I look at this, I have to understand its history. It's again, what is this performed based on? And, you know, it's based on the Ramayana story, you know, but then it's been localized into a Malaysian Kelantanese context. And then, but then it's again, the characters do not change, the values also, the story do not change. All right. So you see, it's similar also to what you have in Indonesia, wayang kulit Purwa, right? You have that as well. But then, of course, the design, the puppet designs and all it's much more stylized, and it's very unique in your own design. And then we look at photographs. So you see, these are visual cultures also appearing in photographs, and these are collective memories. Okay, like what Mr. Abiru also mentioned just now on memories. Again, we build on memories and experiential kind of, this kind of all these experiences. Yeah, so we incorporate into basically our works, our design works. Okay, so you see photographs that will reminisce. Okay, bring back the memories of the yesteryears. Okay, during our father's days, our parents' days, during our grandparents' days, our great-grandparents' days, for example. So each generation, they are different, you know, in their areas and the things that they do, the things, you know, the food they eat, practices in their lives and all that, okay? And then also we're surrounded by advertising billboards everywhere. And you see, there's basically the mixture, you know, lots of it, of course, more towards the advertising, you know, like for a brand, a product, a service, and you know, it basically showcases all these contemporary and modern brands and products out there that we use now. Okay, now I think this would be, I think the last bit of my talk basically looks at the visuals in cultural spaces. And I look at basically the exterior and the interior. So exterior meaning, you know, like again, like let's say the space is a building, okay? So it's basically what surrounds exteriorly, all right? So for example, in terms of murals, and why I chose this as you know, this specific aspect to this example of a visual in cultural spaces for the exterior part. Because why? Because nowadays street art is basically so popular, gaining popularity in many parts of the world. Okay, I would say not just in Malaysia, I believe perhaps in Indonesia as well. Okay, but I've yet to really, you know, discover more of it. Yeah, but then it happens everywhere actually. So then you see that that's because it's becoming a kind of a statement, you know, of an expression by the artists sometimes, and then they use the wall of a building, the facade, you know, as a form of kind of again like a canvas. Okay. So they would paint something like, you know, a visual image of something that they felt it was relevant, you know, to the times, or could be perhaps a kind of event, or let's say some activists, they would actually, you know, kind of insinuate, you know, something that, you know, want to provoke something, you know, perhaps they want to hint to the government, okay, of something, an event, and they would actually paint it there. So of course, sometimes street arts also refers to, you know, graffiti as well, yeah. But then, of course, graffiti used to be deemed as something like a vandalism, you know, on this private property, and then it causes this very ugly sight of the city or town, and it's also against the law. Yeah, but of course, this street art is more, you know, with the permission, with the permit, you know, and of course, you know, the context of it has to be, it cannot touch on sensitive issues or whatnot. Okay. But normally the case that is very basically, I mean, in Malaysia, I can just speak for Malaysia. Okay, it's very much, you know, representational of, let's say this, for example, you can see a craftsman, you know, like a very like intensely focusing on, you know, this pahat, okay, the hammer on the nail. So you can guess basically he is like a tukang kayu, maybe like a wood carver, you know, a carpenter perhaps, yeah, or perhaps he's a shoemaker, because shoemakers as well, you need to hammer that, you know, the nail into the shoe, okay, for example, okay. And then we have this very famous siblings on the bicycle, okay, and this was actually, ironically, was first painted by this Ernest Zakharovich, okay? So he's basically a foreigner in Malaysia, and he painted this. But then he painted something which was reflective of Penang, or perhaps of Malaysia, the Malaysian Chinese community. So you see these siblings, like this girl actually riding on a bike, but it's not. Of course, it's not a real girl, the younger brother, but you see how the expressions and how you know, how she holds it. And of course, that is an installation of a real bicycle there against the wall. So it's basically fixed onto the wall, all right? And then it's very Instagrammable. So a lot of people, tourists, it basically brings tourists like every single day. Okay, every single day, and people would post like as if they're interacting with these siblings on a bicycle, all right? And so this is becoming very, very popular nowadays. And then you see even like foreigners would come, tourist visitors, they come, and then, you know, like how she looks up to her, and how she kind of, it feels like she's, you know, this little girl is looking back at her. So you see how, in terms of the visuals, you know, how this could be expressed in a way. But okay, so this is just an example to show you in terms of street art. And perhaps some of you would know Banksy. Have you heard of Banksy? So Banksy, okay, is basically also a very popular street artist, okay, but then he's very, very thought-provoking, and he tends to be, you know, he tends to bring out issues, you know, basically that's what perhaps for the government, again, is to hint to them. He's an activist, actually, and then, but sometimes he has got a good sense of humor, yeah? So you see, and Banksy's work, his work appears like out of the blues, like, you know, just like suddenly the next morning someone finds his work, and he actually does his work on using stencil and paint, can, and then he would actually have his work marked on a wall or facade of any building in London, in Bristol, okay, for example. And then I mean he travels to different places as well. And then suddenly, if this one graffiti of like this is his similar style kind of pops up, then everyone goes, oh, very crazy over it. The media would showcase it, and then the craziest part of it is even that part of the wall is somehow taken down and auctioned off for millions. Okay, this is like so really incredible in that sense. Yeah. Okay. So this, for example, is of a girl. It's actually with a title, a girl with a balloon, and actually it also carries a message of hope. You see in this. Okay. So she lets go of this heart balloon. Okay. So yeah, and this also Banksy's work. Everyone's suspicious because no one could really confirm it. But then again, looking at the style, with all these art enthusiasts or these specialists, they would have studied his work. They would have, followed his work and whatnot. They would have analyzed them as well. And so this was actually based on, again, travel back to history, okay, during the Dutch Golden Era. Okay, this is by Vermeer. Johannes Vermeer. He's actually a 16th century Renaissance Dutch in the Netherlands, okay, a Dutch artist at that time. So this was based on this famous painting, but then it was done in this graffiti form, okay, and by Banksy. And then the people also try to kind of like add something that's relevant to the current context, which is during the pandemic era. So they added this mask over her. Okay, so you see that these are add-ons. So this again it is like borrowing something of the past and then applying in the current context, the current state. But then at the same time, how relevant it is it, okay, to the current context, the current condition. All right, so these are questions that we should ask ourselves. All right, perhaps there's a meaning behind, or what's the message, the true message, or the real message that the artist wants to convey. Okay, then again, this one final work here that I'm just showing you as an example of this old lady, but a very small size old lady, looks like a little girl actually. But then the reason why it's described as old lady, why? Because when she sneezes, achoo. The title of this is titled as achoo. So when she sneezed, her denture actually flew out. The false teeth flew out, and then you see a lot of people would actually pose just next to it. Okay, because why? This graffiti work was actually done. It was discovered at this one of the steepest lanes in Bristol. Okay, in the UK, and then you see, so people would pose as if this sneeze actually would almost blow this guy away. You see how this sneeze has also blown down the bin, and then also unfolded, turned inside out, the umbrella. So you see, people would actually take a lot of pictures at Instagrams, and it's like a check-in point for them. All right, and it goes really, really crazy on social media. Okay, so this is where from the exterior, I bring you right now back into your interior, which is relevant definitely to what you are majoring in. Okay, you see interior design in terms of, you see what you saw in terms of the graffiti, the street art and whatnot. How is it that it could be applied as a feature wall, perhaps, in a living room, in a space, in this interior space. I mean, it could be also for a, sorry, oh, this one should sorry. Oh, there's one picture that shouldn't be here. It was an overlap. Okay, so then, for example, this as well, you can see these are also the kind of contemporary, or kind of again based on a bit like a comic style, kind of a flat graphics as well. Again, but it's just based on outline, and then how it's very popular nowadays. And you see it in a lot of cafeterias or eateries. And this is actually in a workspace, okay, an office. And then you see again influences of the pop art. Okay, like Andy Warhol's, or the kind of like Marilyn Monroe silkscreen printing, but this one is by Roy Lichtenstein, okay, which is more in this kind of comic style kind of art, and again how it's applied in the interior setting. Okay, all right, and this is something like of the disco fever. All right, it's like Saturday Night's Fever. Okay, this is John Travolta. Yeah, so if you have watched movies like that, and you appreciate that era, having all this very tight fitting tops and this very butt hugging pants, and also basically disco, this discoing and all. So you see, this in a way is like a space where you see these are the display. It's like a gallery. you know, a gallery of all this of that era, of the disco era. Okay, and then you have a kind of a setting which is more peaceful and calm, but very nautical. Nautical is like a, you know, like a seafarers, you know, and then they travel the world, they go for expeditions, and then so you see you have this map like as a kind of a featured wall, okay, like a backdrop in this living room, for example. And then you have something like a very oriental kind of design, a very you know, it's like you see all these basically oriental representations, okay, like the phoenix or the peacocks, and then like all these finches, you know, these birds and whatnot, and the fruits like the pomegranate or whatnot. So these are actually very oriental in a way, very Chinese, Japanese, you know, or Korean even, you know, in that context. Okay. Then we have something like a religious painting, like this is the Creation of Adam, okay, by Michelangelo. All right, is one of the several fresco paintings in the Sistine Chapel. I believe you would have studied that in your architecture history as well. Okay, then is one of the most fascinating paintings ever. Okay, and of course this actually illustrates the relationship between man and God, and they are almost touching. So you kind of feel the intensity that they are almost touching, but not quite. Okay, so it's also reflective of the Bible, yeah, the first chapter, the Genesis chapter, for example. So this again, how this religious context is being adapted or you know, applied in this current contemporary kind of a setting, interior setting. And again, why? The reason, like, why is it suitable? Is it relevant? So these are questions that perhaps you should consider. Okay, perhaps, you know, if the client wants it, okay, that's fine. If they want to actually reflect that kind of era, the kind of concept behind, that's fine. Yeah, that's relevant. Okay, and for example, this is actually one of the Starbucks. You can see actually Starbucks they're very creative in different parts of the world. And this, for example, actually applies something like a Zentangle art that we do. Yeah, now this is very therapeutic, and then you just color, you know, all this kind of 2D graphics, and then you see certain parts are colored, certain parts are not, and sometimes certain restaurants or places, like, they even encourage the customers to color, so they get some kind of interaction from the customer. So these are ideas that you could perhaps incorporate into your interior design projects or whatnot. But again, depending on the relevance and the suitability of it. Okay, to conclude, you know, overall, spaces can be internal or external. Okay, they can be of different sizes, focusing on the local conditions or the global phenomena. Okay, so cultural space is in what you observe, what you sense, and what you take for real. This will reveal something about you, yourself as a designer, your design understanding, your aesthetics, and your values. Okay, so it really relates everything about who you are as a designer. Okay, and about this, because in this work of the space that you're exploring in. Okay, the cultural patterns you know, are actually unconscious and can only be revealed by experiencing the unfamiliar. Yet they influence deeply our methods, processes, objectives, and design decisions. Okay, guys? So you see, we are surrounded by different kind of cultures. I mean, it's not just traditional cultures, as I mentioned, or historical kind of cultures that we learn from textbooks, but coffee culture, trip culture, you know, all this Japanese manga, anime culture, and whatnot. Okay, so, and what matters is the complexity, fluidity, diversity that is rooted in the contemporary as well as in traditions, ways of living, communities, values that give a space its unique quality and identity. This was actually extracted from this travelogue you know, that I found online, but it's so relevant to this talk and to what I've been sharing with you all. I would like to end my sharing with this one final quote by John Berger. Okay, basically he is actually an advocate in terms of seeing, you know, mixed meanings. Okay, and he quotes, I quote him: "Images carry ideas, emotions, visions of history." Okay, guys, that's all. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiona, for the exciting graphic presentation.
Welcome.
It's a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so last but not the least, let's move on to our fourth speaker. Let me introduce you to Ms. Bibi Safira Hanfa Badil Zaman, Bachelor of Communication Design and Master of Communication Design. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Ms. Bibi.
It's hard to pronounce my name.
Okay. Ms. Bibi is passionate about art and firmly believes that pictures and paintings can be more than just beautiful pieces that hang on the wall. And in her opinion, art and design can actually be a source of inspiration to the community. Since 2015, she has been a member of the Type Directors Club. She has worked in various companies in Malaysia and Australia and has held different portfolios, including the head of the creative team for Musika in Melbourne and creative advisor for an art event called Conteng Lah in Malaysia. And currently, she is a lecturer in the Department of Art and Design at Sunway University. So, Miss Bibi, the time is yours.
All right, thank you. So let me share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you guys can see it, yeah?
Yes, we can see it clearly.
All right, okay, so I'm gonna go through it pretty fast because I know we're a bit behind of time. So I'm just gonna try and go briefly with all of it because most of the main topic or discipline has been touched by Mr. Amirul and Mr. Azlan. Okay, and of course I'm Miss Fiona also. Okay. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about colors and its meaning. So as you know, for our eyes, we can look at colors, about 10 million colors. So when we go into a room, when we go into an office, a playground, parks, and so on, you will see a lot of colors. Okay, so colors also evokes feelings, sadness, happiness, anger, and all that. It evokes all these kind of feelings in us when we look at a certain color, and also it communicates certain meaning. So it also established an organization to give an identity to an organization, to a building, places, and so on. Okay, so but for cross culture, there's no hard coded formula for this because every different culture perceive it as differently. So you might perceive it differently and the Indian might perceive it differently. So everybody look at it in a different way. Okay, religion too has different meaning for each colors or what they associate with. All right. Okay, so I'll go to the example here. So for Indian, they associate red to purity because that's why they use the color red in their sari for weddings, celebration, and so on. All this holy, I don't know whether wedding is holy or not, but all this festival, holy festival and all that, they use the color red because it's purity. And they use it on the women because women is supposed to be purity. Okay. And then also for the China, red symbolizes luck and happiness. So that's why in Chinese New Year or the Lunar Year, you see a lot of red colors as part of decoration. Ang pao, as we call it here, I don't know what do you guys call it there, but ang pao is where the money pockets, where you put money, most of them are always in red because you're getting money. It's a good luck thing to get money, right? Okay, so for South Africa, red is associated with mourning. So the red section of their flag represent the bloodshed in terms of violence and sacrifice. So as you can see here, certain part of the country, red means a good thing. Certain part of another country, red means a bad thing. Okay, so for Hindu, blue is tied to Krishna and Lord Rama, who devoted themselves to protecting humanity, destroying evil, and often, so when they're depicted in visuals, they are often in blue, either the faces or mostly their whole bodies. They're depicted as in blue. So for blue in Christianity, it represents the sky. So it's a symbolic for heaven and the truth. Judaism, blue is often associated to the faith because of the colors of the decoration during Hanukkah. So normally they use the color blue in their decoration. And for green in Islam, green is to symbolize growth. So nature and life. And also during the war, Islamic army wore green to identify themselves as a Muslim or as a Islam. And also, as far as we know, Prophet Muhammad, the color green is actually his favorite. So this is what we learn in where we read and all that. So for Mexico, green is the national color where it represents independence and patriotism. South America, green is the color of death. So as you can see, different meaning in different country and different religion. All right. So I'll move to the pattern and its meaning. So for pattern, the visual element of a pattern, so I think you guys can read it on your own. I'm just going to briefly explain it. So pattern is basically a repetition of an element. So there is two basic pattern. There's natural pattern and there's also man-made pattern. Both this pattern can be organic or geometric, regular or irregular, structural or decorative. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so songket, I'm going to talk more on songket, but this is Malaysian songket, yeah? So songket is basically a fabric that uses a weaving technique. Their patterns normally formed by either using a gold thread or a silver thread. This is only for the pattern forming, yeah? So I'm going to touch on Bunga Tanjung, which symbolizes friendliness and hospitality. It is also considered a custom for Malays to invite or to welcome visitors with open arms back in those days. So Bunga Tanjung, let me just give you a brief history about Bunga Tanjung. So back in the olden days, the Malays, in their garden, they normally have a Bunga Tanjung. Bunga Tanjung is a small plant with small flowers at their garden, at their home garden. So they use this symbolize of this bunga, of this flower, as a symbolism for them to greet people or to accept visitors with open arms. So it's not only visitors as in family, cousins, friends, also traders, because during that time, traders is very ongoing, it's popular hotspot, right? So there's a lot of traders going on. So they also welcome traders as well. And it's also a Malay custom that you need to be a good host and a very welcoming host. So if you reject them and if you ask them to go home on a certain time, it will look as a rude thing. Okay. Okay. After that, we will move into the Japan. So kimono. So kimono, the direct meaning of kimono means the thing to wear. So kimono was originated from China in the Nara period. Originally worn by the commoners or as an undergarment for the aristocracy. The pattern, okay, so the pattern of the garment is the important one, is the significant one which has rich and meaningful meaning. So all the patterns that you see in a kimono, it has a meaning or it associate to something that they believe in. Okay. So the garment cutting and all that, it doesn't have any symbolic meaning to it, but it's more on the pattern itself. So here, as you can see, is the crane. So the most popular bird depicted on kimono is the crane. So they believe that this bird lived for 1,000 years and inhabit the land of the immortals, and is also a symbol for longevity and good fortune. Okay. Hold on now. Okay, so this is the phoenix. So phoenix is a mystical bird that represents a multitude of meaning. So in the Chinese character, it represents fire and female, making it a very powerful kimono motif. So during the Showa period, the symbol, the illustration of the fiery bird is softened a bit to make it more feminine, to make it more delicate, okay, to represent the female that's wearing it. And the motif also represents loyalty, wisdom, and benevolence. Okay, so another interesting thing is colors in the kimono. Colors also have strong metaphor. Have a strong metaphor and cultural meaning. So the dyes are seen to embody the spirit of the past which they are expected. So for example, we have lemongrass. So for example, yeah, I don't know whether they use lemongrass or not, but for example, if you use a lemongrass and you have this medical property inside the lemongrass, so when you wear it, it'll be like a mosquito repellent, something like that, okay? Okay, so after that, bamboo. So bamboo is a very strong plant. So it bends in the wind but never breaks. It's an evergreen and long-living tree. Bamboo is known for a lucky omen to the Japanese. So this pattern also represents the kisho pattern, where kisho pattern is where you will wear during a special occasion. So for weddings or celebration or something, right? So bamboo is often combined with another kimono pattern. So one thing you need to know about kimono is certain kimono or certain patterns, they will wear it on seasonal. So you have a pattern that you wear during the winter, autumn, summers, and so on. Okay, so but for bamboo, you can wear this all year long. Okay, because of the symbol that it brings. Okay, so after that you have peonies. Peonies are famous for their beauty and are also told to be the king of flowers. So in Japan, it only blooms in May. So this pattern will be worn from April to the start of June. So flowers such as peonies, wisteria, bush clover frequently appear on garment, and of course during seasonal significance. Okay. Yeah. After that, we'll move into the Islamic art. So Islamic art, the thing that you need to know is there are 3 characteristics, so which is floral, geometric, and calligraphy, often overlapping across forms in genres. These elements are influenced by the principle in the Quran. So art of Islam is basically a reflection of its culture and its values, and reveal the way Muslims view the spiritual realm in the universe. So for Muslim, the reality begins and centers around Allah, around Allah. Okay, Allah is the heart and aspiration for Muslim, and is the focus of the Muslimin's life. Okay, that is the belief. Okay, so after this I'll explain on the floral. I'm not going to touch on the calligraphy, I'm just going to touch on the pattern side. So floral flowers design were used by artists in the place of human or animal form as Islamic art pattern. So this floral pattern, you can actually see it or apply it into ceramics, carpet, tiles, wall, home decoration pieces, which I will show examples later at the end of the slide. So certain types of flower or plant can have a theological meaning. So for example, the cypress often represent modesty before God. Okay. So geometric. So because of the belief in Islam on aniconism, geometric complexity allowed for spiritual contemplation. At the same time, this ongoing looping and scrolling shapes reflects God's infinite creation and reflect a sense of divine oneness. So aniconism means does not use icons or visual images to depict living creatures or religious figure. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the slide. Don't fall asleep yet for those students. Okay, so culture and interior design. So here we will look at how a cultural element are integrated into interior design space or areas, or even the decoration. Okay. So as you can see here, on your left picture is the headboard. So you can apply floral patterns, Islamic patterns, or any other patterns that have a significant meaning to it into the headboard. But just make sure it relates to the people, to the consumer that you're selling it to. Okay. So, I mean, if you're selling it to a more Muslim consumer, you can't really put in living creatures into it because it goes against their belief. Okay. So at the side, if you can see on the right-hand side, is a lotus-inspired candle holder. This is actually a candle holder. So lotus present purity of the body. So speech and mind as a float. So it's a calming effect. So lotus is supposed to represent that. And it goes really hand in hand with how candle market themselves, because the candle market themselves as a relaxing product that when you burn it, you will feel relaxed, you will feel no worries at all. Your work, your office work or your assignment work is all in the school. You don't bring it back home, so you feel relaxed. So it goes hand in hand with the lotus flower and the product that they're selling. Okay. Okay, so here you can see a Buddha statue. So they turn a Buddha statue into a potted plant, which is an interesting application. And on the right side is the statue decoration at a lily pond. So this fact, you can actually use it in restaurant and in your home if anybody really loves the teaching of Buddha and so on and preaches it. So you can apply this at home, restaurant, hotels, and any other places or commercial places. Here you can see Islamic pattern being applied in various places. So you have Islamic pattern on the ceiling, at the wall, at the door. So it's good to play with surrounding. When you walk into a space, you can look at the surrounding, the ceiling, the wall, and the floor, and so on. You can look at it. You can explore and experiment on where you want to apply those patterns or those cultural element, but just be sure to be respectful, because you don't want to rub in the wrong side. Okay. So here is Rotan. So yeah, so Rotan is so famous. I know there's a shop in Jakarta called Kim Su, I think, Bali. If I'm not mistaken. Bali, is it? Bali, Kim Su. Sorry, Mr. Amirul is behind me to check whether I'm doing it right or not. Okay, so Kim Su is a really, I really like the place. I think it's really good because they do implement cultural element into their product as well. And back in 2018 August, I think we went to Bali. And we went to Kim Su, so they have a lot of interesting products there. So for Rotan, if you want to make it more contemporary or more modern for the current days, you can infuse it with a thread. Mixing different material with the Rotan would also bring a new life to it. So like for the example here that you can see, they are mixing with a colorful thread into with the Rotan itself. And also, if the middle picture, if you can see, we call it serkap. I'm not sure what do you guys call it over there, but serkap is actually a tool where you use to fishing for fish. Okay. So, but here in this image, you can see they use it as a chandelier. So it gives a whole different perspective, a different feeling to that space. Okay. Over here is, okay, you can see there's a window and okay, so I'm going to go to the left picture first. So on the left picture shows a modernized window, tingkap, which still maintain the old charm, but with a new modern interpretation. Okay, and then for the middle picture, you can see the ceiling, Rousseau, it's called Rousseau, is a traditional way of enhancing the air circulation in a room. And as you can see here, it does well with the modern application in the room itself. So it doesn't mean if it's cultural, you can't mix it with a modern application, with a modern other products and all that. You can mix it together, but just make sure it gels together, it complements each other. So one cannot be outstanding than the other, or it could be, but not all at once, okay? So on the right, the far right here is a cabinet using the Rotan material. It also it looks modern, but it gives that sense of warmth into the space because you have that natural color into it. So it gives that handmade and a bit more approachable, okay? Okay, so this one here, you can see tribal mask being used as a wall decorative in an area or in a space. So you can actually use this type of application or approach to restaurant, museums, or gallery. And just make sure also if the mask that you're using, because each mask will have a different meaning to it as well. So be sure to use the right kind of tribal mask or the right kind of icon that represent your space or your building. Okay, here is the Oriental cabinet. If you can see on the left here, the black cabinet is an Oriental cabinet, are given a new purpose in this eclectic ensemble. So it goes well with a modern furniture, modern features, and also this cultural features. It gels well. And for on the right hand side here, looking at it, you know it's very Oriental. But even though it's Oriental, it's pair up nicely with modern features, and also the colors that you see here give that calming effect. You don't feel threatened, you don't feel that you need to run away or stress or anything. You feel calmer and you just want to sit and relax. Okay, so our last one here is a Moroccan pattern design. And they turn it into a feature sink, which will be really interesting in a guest bedroom or in the hotels or any places, museum, any places that you think you want to give a bit of a highlight to that, to the particular area. Okay, and then on the right side is the tribal mask with a modern twist. So they're giving it a new life, a new breath to it. Okay. So I think that went fairly fast. So thank you so much. But before that, I would just like to thank from all of us, Mr. Amirul, Mr. Azan, Miss Fiona, for inviting us for the talk here today. But I just want to leave this to you guys. Just remember, it's good that you want to apply cultural element into your spaces. It's really good because you will give it a sense of storytelling. It will be a conversation starter. It will also give a sense of belonging to the consumer who's having it. But be sure to be respectful and also tasteful, because you don't want it to be interpreted wrongly from other people. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vivi. Very, very nice presentation. Very well divided.
There's one more.
Oh, yes.
Miss Fiona would like to mention something about this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vivi. Just a quick one, just to share with everyone, all the students and also the lecturers of Petra Christian University, because Sunway University School of Arts will be hosting our first ever inaugural international conference on material culture. So yes, please visit our website for more info, and later I'll share basically the links and all with Diana in WhatsApp as well. And also then you can always share with the students. They can always browse through for the info themselves. Yeah. So we encourage your participation and support. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for all the wonderful presentation. And let me open the opportunity. Oh, we have a lot of questions already. Yeah. So maybe we can start with the first question from Handy. Yeah, it's to Mr. Amirul. What's your view towards Antonio Gaudi and the La Sagradia Familia Church? And is it come from cultural basis or it creates a new culture?
Okay. This goes to Henry Setiawan from Petra Christian University. What's your view towards Antoni Gaudi La Sagrada Familia Church? Well, okay. So if you study a little bit more on Antoni Gaudi, because Gaudi was one of my favorite architects actually. So if you study more on the background of Gaudi and how Gaudi has been brought up, okay. So growing up, he actually listens to a lot of dragons and dungeon tales. So this actually plays a big part in all of his design. So Gaudi, I would say that he's very ambitious yet imaginary architect. So it really reflects in all his work. And the best part about Gaudi is he don't really have any blueprints. So he's actually, he can go doing the design today, goes to sleep at night, and dream something, and tomorrow design something else. So he is that kind of architect. All right. So my view on Gaudi is, well, it's good for you to actually have your imagination running wild, but then again, in our era today, we have to be a little bit more functional and practical, and also sustainable in our space planning, in our design per se, and then in our design in general, right? Is that answering your questions?
Okay, thank you. Maybe the second question from Mr. Luki from Petra Christian University. She wants to thank you for the insightful presentation about vernacular architecture. And how is the trick as an interior designer to incorporate all modern things into an ancient or heritage building so that it looks in a modern way without making damages to the existing? So making new interior systems.
So, thank you for the questions. Who's that again? Lucky.
Mr. Lucky, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for your question. That's a very good question actually, because whenever we talk about something that really old or cultural elements, right, especially in buildings and architecture, yet structural elements. Yes, we are not. We have these studies about preservation of architecture, meaning that whenever we actually goes to a building that carries a lot of cultural values or history behind it, and then as you all know, we also have the UNICEF World Heritage Site, for example. Okay, so in order to achieve that, we are not accountable to change the overall look of the building, for example, yet. But then again, what we do as a designers, right? Frankly speaking, as a architect, interior designers, or graphic designers, even we need to understand the concept behind it first. For example, let's say if you're talking about an old building or all these vernacular architecture application, it's not about the application. It's actually about the theory and it's about the practicality of the design. So we can always interpret because it's just an idea. So we can interpret it in a modern way so that it will carry the same qualities and also the same implementation and mechanism so that we can replicate back the vernacular architecture that has been done before back in history into a modern application. Right? It's all about the theory behind it. It's not really the actual physical thing. It's like the way of thinking, right? The way of thinking and also the technology that has been applied in those days and how we adapt to that technology in our today's design world.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amirul. I think your answer also already answered Goldie, Katarina, and Michelle Rosalin's question, yeah, about how to reinterpret traditional design into a modern, communicable way that could be accepted by the contemporary society. So
Yeah.
maybe I can move on to the next, to a different question. Hi, I'm Ria from Petra Christian University. Would like to ask how to combine a vicious culture and technology in a traditional church, for example, in Gereja Kristen Jawi Wetan in Surabaya, or the church, the Christ Church in Malacca. So it's like the similar typology without eliminating the traditional elements. Thank you and stay healthy.
Okay, who's the student again? I tried to find that.
Ria Griselda after Katarina.
After Catalina, Michelle, Ria, Gazelle. Okay. How to combine a various culture in technology in a traditional church, example, Kristen Jawi, Wetan, okay, without eliminating the traditional elements. Okay, so I think it's pretty much similar to the question that I answered before. It is totally depend on what you are trying to preserve and what application that you think that can enhance the particular building. So in other words, let's say if you're working in a project that preservation project, for example, you have to study about the building first. So by all means, that when you study a building, it have to be a thorough study, so that you understand what exactly the mechanism that lies behind that particular historical building that give certain characteristic to the building. All right. So whenever you understand that properly, you get the grip of the idea behind the design and even behind the mechanism that makes that building very special. Okay. So I believe the application and reinterpretation of the design and mechanism can be done anywhere else. So, well, without eliminating the traditional element you were saying, then we need to be more specific on the traditional element because we have a lot. For example, even the space, the arrangement space also considered as a traditional elements, right? So my advice to you is, let's say if you want to combine the culture, right, between two things, for example, it's always about checks and balance. Okay, so you choose wisely on which part that you think that can be applicable and which part actually from the other projects that can be beneficial for your current project. So it's all about studying to the core of the building characteristics and the cultural element, right?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amirul. I think your answer also already answered Fanny Saliana's question, which is also relevant. So let's move on to Funik Tandiono's question from Petra Christian University. Many cultural spaces uses traditional and local materials, and following that, many people still think that local or traditional materials are not stable or not strong enough for enclosures, outdated, and such things like that. As designers, in what way can we change that kind of perception to the society?
Okay, thank you, Franny Tandiono. Okay.
Yes.
When we talk about material, yeah, material is actually the things that are very relevant to time. For example, let's say if you have something that really cultural, meaning that the material has been brought back to the history of the building itself, sometimes it's good to re-replicate the material. That's what we've been doing anyway. If you see the available building material nowadays that available in the market, all of those material has gone through a period of time of R&D, research and development. So basically, the idea of any material that can be implemented is not necessarily you replicate or taking the same exact material as before, because there's a lot of issues going on, maintenance issues, and then the durability issues, the structure of the material itself also come into the questions. Okay, so you need to be more aware of the current material that available that replicates the idea behind the traditional material. For example, there's a certain leaf that has been used in traditional architecture for the roof, for example, because they're resistant against water. So this material, it's not suggested to be used in modern way unless you are designing a novelty building or a novelty interior design, for example. But then again, you can go and find things that actually as a symbolism instead of the functional part of the material. But I believe most of the material that we have today is actually been studied and also been verified to withstand or to endure the current climates, for example. And all these points, what makes the material that we have today is actually driven from what we have in the past. So be more broad in your material selections, and I believe you would be able to replicate the cultural values not only by the materials but also in the design terms as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amirul. I think this question can go to both Mr. Amirul and Mr. Aslan. My name is Lydia from Petra Christian University. I want to ask, is there any other way to create that majestic and quiet feeling in buildings of worship other than just because of the size of the building, which is high or large, or by using lighting? Can you give us some tips to design a worship building that can give a balance between modern and traditional?
Perhaps Mr. Aslan want to take this one?
Okay. All right. So I will read back. So hi Lydia. So is to have like a majestic or quiet feeling for the building is actually is depend on the not just the size, also how the worship is. It can be the different type of lighting. So it mean how and the empty of the space. Even for example is in the mosque or in any modern mosque is you can see it's like is empty space, so empty large space, so it gives you a very majestic feeling even though it don't have a high volume. All right, so but is to give a balance between modern and traditional style is mean to study the element. Is mean once you study the element of the traditional style and to interpret back into the modern type of line, a different type of modern interpretation. For example, is how this is normally Bauhaus is, for example, the Bauhaus in the era. So they interpret from the Art Deco or Rococo is they just interpret using line. So they interpret into a very straight line, and then is give you a different type of the balance between modern and traditional. So it's mean the traditional in modern way. So also you can play around with the material as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aslan. The next question can also apply to Mr. Amirul and Mr. Aslan. is in connection to reinterpreting traditional values to modern, but sometimes this kind of action bring confusion to the new generation because they don't recognize the ornaments that have a cultural background, and there's so much modification from the origin. So Sieni's question is, how far can we modify a cultural element, and how to deliver the cultural message through this modification correctly? Maybe Mr. Aslan or Mr. Amirul, or maybe Miss Bibi, Miss Fiona.
I would like to here. So normally, if you want to do it as a whole package, right? So it'll be good with other disciplines as well. So for interior architecture or for interior designer, you might be more hands design for the space, but working with a graphic designer or visual communicator, they will be able to create a package for you that will help consumers to make them understand about the cultural values of that particular colors or something. That's my point of view, lah.
Okay, thank you, Miss Vivi. The next question is to Mr. Amirul. Can you explain further about how to express cultural spaces through metaphorical and symbolism if it's not from the decoration motif, ornament, or carvings?
Okay. So who's asking? Christina, right?
Yes, Christina.
Okay. So Christina, the thing is like this. Whenever you encounter a project or things that are heavily involved in cultural, right? So the key word here is you need to understand what you are doing first. Okay. So let's say if you're talking about batik, you really need to understand about batik from the output, as from the starting of the fabric, how the fabric into the colors, into the into the very last hook, right? So basically to understand, mastering the idea of what you want to do. The same also goes to interior design and architecture. For example, let's say you are asking that explanation about how to express the cultural space through metaphorical and symbolism. Okay, without looking at the physical or visual things, right? This thing can be achieved as well. For example, let's say if you go, if you do a little bit more research on the Balinese, for example, the Balinese settings of temples or the Balinese house, for example, they have like a series of house and of spaces that guide to the main house, for instance, right? But in Malaysia, we also have that. For example, in our traditional Malay house, we have a few sections of the house that actually signifies certain meanings and also signifies certain activities or culture that happen in that particular space. And we can see this throughout if you do a little bit of study on Malay traditional house, for example, the way you greet people, right? You greet with a veranda, right? And then after the veranda, we have the rumah ibu, and then goes to the balconies, and then go to the kitchen, for example. So the series of all this arrangement of spaces, right, signifies the cultural of certain, right? The same also applies to Chinese, and also the same also applies to Indian culture, for example, right? But I'm not quite sure how the Chinese houses was designed, because it relates more into the culture of Feng Shui and things like that. But if you about to decipher, for example, if you're about to decipher cultural elements such as certain ethnicity or certain group of people, be sure that you make your throughout studies on the people. All right, don't just look at the output, right? You do what I call a reverse study, right, from the output, and then you work backwards and see which part of the cultural element that can help you to enhance your design instead of having those physical and visual elements in. All right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amirul. I think the next questions are actually similar to one another. So I will just skip it because it has already been answered. I move on to Agnes' question. How to design a building based on their... Sorry? Yes, how to design a building based on their climate and surroundings so that the building can be a vernacular building and can give And can you give us some tips based on climate and surroundings?
Who's asking this?
Agnes.
Agnes.
Yes.
Agnes, good morning. Agnes, design based on the climate and surroundings. Okay. Azlan, you want to do or answer the vernacular architecture? Okay, never mind. Okay, so she was asking about how to design a building on the climate surroundings of the building, the vernacular building, and can do something. Okay. If you understand about the vernacular architecture, right, it's all about the streets. It's all about the location. It's always about like the locations. For example, what we have here in Malaysia, we have the East Coast and East Coast, right? West Coast and East Coast. Those people in East Coast, for example, if you look into their traditional houses, they all built stilts. So basically that area is prone to flooding. So they have their house built on stilts to avoid the water coming to the house. So basically, if you understand the anthropometrics of humans, all right, and then the functionality and practicality of the logics, and you can actually design something with that, but with that similar mechanism as well, right? If you take your time and study about the Malay vernacular architecture, you how the building has been designed in such way, well, traditional way of to enhance their ventilations, to actually to collect the rainwater, for example. This is way beyond before the technology. All right. And then when you talk about the vernacular architecture in your particular context, right, be sure that you study the surrounding first. So you need to come up with the feasibility studies, or a true outside analysis, and what can you benefit from the cultural element. For example, let's say if your site is located on the top of the hill, for example, with a lot of winds, how can you manipulate that wind into your design? And if your site is located nearby the water, how can you use the water to actually benefit to your building? So it's all about the study of your surrounding, right?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amirul. I think we don't have enough time to address all the questions, so I will skip similar questions. And also maybe I want to give a chance to the other speakers to, to also answer the questions. So let's move on to Valerie's question. I was wondering how's the condition regarding COVID-19 in Malaysia, especially in design, and how does it affect its museums? And what program do you suggest in incorporating, especially the museum area, to reduce the spread of COVID-19? And do the museums get disinfected every day? And does the disinfectant has its effects on the collection or materials, or do you have any other material suggestion? Yes, Mr. Aslan, maybe.
Okay, so for the COVID-19 is mostly the is not so much effect on the collection, because it's all on the glass. All right, even though they do disinfection, they still protecting the collection unless is open type of collection, like normally is more like painting or something. Maybe they will put a glass on the collection, or the material is meant to make a more protective type of collection. Some collection is very fragile, all right, because the chemical effect. So this one, once you study the how ages of the collection, it is like an old manuscript or like kind of a wood. So this is you need to the curator will take care of the collection. And then the most important part is to have a distance in between the collection and the visitor. Also can interpret using the more touchless technology, like projection or something, is more into a movement type, motion type of technology. I think this is into the future. Even though it's not the COVID after the COVID and the pandemic, so they will maintain the touchless type of technology. It's like more into motion type of projection. All right. I think it's material is not in the subject of material is more like on the technology side, not the material itself. I think.
Thank you, Mr. Aslan. Okay, so let me jump. I'm very sorry. I apologize to all the participants who have asked questions. Because of the time limit, I have to jump to the next questions to give a chance to other speakers to answer. So let me please allow me to jump to Mrs. Laxmi Kusuma Wardani's question, which is for Dr. Fiona. The epistemology of visual culture imagery sometimes eliminates the boundaries of true or false, original or false, information, disinformation, knowledge, pseudo. Sometimes this is a false subjectivity. So how should designers anticipate the future of visual culture in order to keep educating the public about things, good things about local wisdom? And visual culture is often influenced by political goals, psychology, aesthetic image, cultural banality. So there is a cultural degradation. So how can visual culture still have moral values regarding local wisdom for education and for observers? Not only is it beautiful in composition, but there is experience and empathy as well as education. Very long.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Lakshmi. Okay. Wow, I'm flattered to be receiving a question of this depth. I guess because it really shows that you are one of the really thinking people out there. Because I truly appreciate the depth of your questions, and I'll try to answer the best as I can. But again, frankly speaking, to tell you very frankly, I basically don't really have an answer to this phenomenon, because I mean this situation, this circumstances. Why? Because I totally agree with you in terms of the basically in terms of the nowadays we are so overridden with all this different kind of like exposure of cultures, and sometimes there's this terminology, have you heard of it? It's called cultural appropriation. So sometimes it's also this misuse of certain culture, like adaptation, for example, or they would dress themselves at, like, let's say the cosplay conventions that your generation goes to nowadays. Yeah, so it's really the trend. And like the thing is, like, being dressed that way, let's say of a figure, let's say for example, maybe of this Red Indian, for example, and wearing the headdress and all. But the thing is, do they understand the significance behind it, like the meanings, the symbolism? Because it's something sacred to their culture, to the Red Indians community. But the thing is, if we do not have sufficient knowledge and research of it, and we just blindly just apply or just wear it, or just just think that we would like to set a trend, like a fashion trend or whatnot, and we kind of perhaps if you, in your context, you apply into your own interior design works, and then it's like, oh my gosh, and what would others see? What would the people of that community, of that nation, that country actually perceive it? Like how would they feel offended? And also, like what Miss Bibi also shared with you, and also what I have mentioned about knowing basically the right context, the cultural context, and also its symbolisms and its its representations. And basically my suggestion, perhaps to your question in this, and for me as a lecturer, and what I do, because I teach art history and art design history, and I practice basically let's say more on local cultural history. And what I do is I incorporate into my assignments. I bring my students for a study trip to Kelantan, for example, and it was placed for me for my study, my own PhD study, and I brought them to visit, to watch the performances of the Wayang Kulit Kelantan, to understand the puppet making processes, and also to actually really appreciate basically the lifestyle of the Tok Dalangs in the village, and to actually understand again also the other aspects of this art form. And because you see, and also the part of the study trip program was also like teaching them how to masak the nasi kerabu, so they also learn about the lifestyle, the living cultures there, in Kelantan, of the people there. So you see, I think for me, as an educator, and since you mentioned in terms of education, for education or even for observers, is for me to inculcate, to bring these my students to these places, the actual sites, the visits, to visit the actual location, to talk to the people there, to understand their everything about them, okay, so that we could transfer that same knowledge and information into our designs and into, it could be a report writing, it could be a dissertation, a thesis or whatnot, but the information has to be accurate, and it has to accurately portray what it means, what it represents of that culture, that the community, for example. So I could say, for me as an educator, from my perspective and from what I am practicing now, I would advocate this very strongly in terms of research. Research is key, okay? So you must do proper research. You must know which proper references, which trustable reference sources that you should refer to when it comes to, applying in terms of cultural context and all. And hopefully with these, the correct, accurate information disseminated, it would change the, basically the perception or the misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the public towards these, I guess. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I actually answered your question, my dear. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Fiona. Actually, Dr. Laxmi is our head of department.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, Dr. Laxmi. Oh, I'm not sure if I answered correctly, Lucia. So we could always exchange views, of this, because wow, this is really the depth of. I was like thinking, wow, one of the students, like, wow. Hi, Dr. Laxmi. Nice to meet you.
All right. Maybe we have a last question. Maybe for Ms. B. Yeah, Dr. Fiona can also help and can also answer if you like. Sure. From Michelle Rosalind, is there any tips to put some local ornament for an interior gallery, but still highlighting the painting display?
What's the name? What's her name?
Michelle Rosalind.
Michelle Rosalind. Yeah. Local ornament for interior gallery.
Okay. Yes, but still, the focus is still on the painting, on the object, I guess. That's her question.
One thing I'm gonna say is, you need to have your focal point. So where you want people to highlight on. So we call it, as visual designer, we call it as hierarchy. So you lead the audience high, where they should look at first, and then the surrounding should be not overwhelming, so the painting will still speak for itself. So that one, you need to look at the overall space and look at which area should be featuring on first, then your audience eye to the next area. I hope that answers.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Ms. Vivi. I think I missed one question. Actually, it's from our lecturer of cultural space. So I think this is the last question for. I think this goes to Mr. Amirul. It's from Mr. Ronald. Mr. Amirul, are you still with us, Mr. Idlan? Yes. So how is the existence of a Malay house as a vernacular building nowadays in Malaysia? And is it able to survive with the old form or be transformed according to the changing times? And how has the adjustment happened? Yeah, because Mr. Ronald is also a researcher on traditional houses, so he's curious about the conditions of the traditional houses in Malaysia.
Okay, looking at the current situation in Malaysia and the current trends of buildings in Malaysia, I would say we lean more towards the preservation rather than creating a new things. So in the past years, we can see that a lot of the buildings has been, a lot of the old building has been preserved by, and also by some NGOs and also owners, right? And then some of these old traditional Malay house have been highlighted as the point of interest for tourists as well. So to say that this traditional house surviving, yes, it is surviving, but in preservation. But to see behind the architecture of Malaysia be implemented in the new development of house, that one I would say that it ties back really to the to the to the context the context of urbanization, for example, right? So most of the projects or most of the houses that I saw with this vernacular architecture is actually all private owners. They don't really have like a development or a new housing that been built in a way where it inherit all the technology and also all the parts of architecture per se into the building as what we have before, but then again be interpreted in the new style. All right. So that I hope that answer your questions. Oh, we have
One more guest lecture.
Okay, so I guess we have actually exceeded the time limit. So please allow me to end this lecture. But before, I would like to ask the participants to give our appreciation to our honorable speakers here by clicking on any of the reaction buttons in the Zoom button below. Yeah, there's the heart or applause. Yes, please give your reaction or to show your appreciation. Thank you very much to Mr. Idlan, Mr. Aslan, Dr. Fiona, and Ms. Bibi. We really learned a lot from your presentation, and we have gained new insights and knowledge from all your wonderful experiences. I hope that you can continue to inspire other younger generation. Okay, so before we end this lecture, let us take a group photo together to preserve this memory. So may I kindly request all the audience to switch on their cameras and give us your best smile. And to our committee, please inform us when you have completed the screenshot. Goldie, please inform us if you're done with the screenshot, okay?
Okay, wait.
Okay, all done.
Okay, thank you very much, Goldie.
Yeah,
So
Diana,
we have come, yes?
for those people who didn't get a chance to ask me question, you are welcome to actually email me. So maybe you can actually share our email to the student as well. In case
Okay, yes, I will share them to the class later.
Yep,
Thank
sure.
you very much for the offer. So we have come to the end of this public lecture on behalf of the Interior Design Department of Petra Christian University. I would like to thank all the speakers for your wonderful contribution. We wish you success in your future projects and endeavors. And I would also like to thank all the audience from all participating universities for your keen participation. We truly apologize if there has been any mistake or imperfection as the host, and we truly look forward to meeting you again in our next open event. So farewell and wish you all a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Amirul, Mr. Azlan, Ms. Fiona, and Ms. Bibi.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everything. Thank you
You're
to the organizer.
welcome. Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe. Okay.